They say omegas are weak because we feel too much. We're the pack's emotional sponges, absorbing pain, rage, grief that isn't ours to carry. But here's what they don't tell you. When you feel everything, you also know everything. And on the night they forced me to sing the Luna hymn as a joke, I felt something that made my blood turn to ice. The wolves in that hall? Half of them were already dying. Their mate bonds were rotting from the inside, turning black like frostbitten flesh. And they had no idea. I did, because I could see what no wolf should ever see, the invisible threads that bind souls together. And I watched them snap, one by one, while everyone smiled and pretended everything was fine. Chapter 1. The night I sang death into silence. My name is Nina, and I've been watching wolves die for 17 years. Not with fangs or claws, not in glorious battle or dramatic sacrifice. I watch them die slowly, quietly, from the inside out, their mate bonds fraying like old rope until something essential just breaks. The first time I saw it, I was 6 years old. My mother stood at the kitchen window, staring at nothing. I remember thinking her eyes looked wrong, empty, like someone had scooped out everything that made her her and left just a shell wearing her face. I walked up behind her and saw it, the thread connecting her heart to my father's, pulsing at his neck where the mating gland should glow warm and golden. Except it wasn't golden anymore. It was gray, mottled with black spots like disease spreading through healthy tissue. "Mama?" I'd whispered. "Your thread is sick." She turned to me with the strangest expression, not surprise, relief. "You can see it too," she'd said. Not a question, a confession. 3 days later, she walked into the Clearwater forest and never came back. The pack ruled it a rogue attack. My father remarried within 6 months, his new mate bond snapping into place so fast it made my teeth ache to watch. No one ever talked about my mother again, and I learned my first lesson about being different. Some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. I kept my ability hidden for 11 years, watched bonds sicken and snap in silence, felt wolves crumble under the weight of connections that should have sustained them, but instead became anchors dragging them into darkness. The pack called me weak, oversensitive, too fragile for pack runs, too emotional for real work. They weren't wrong. I was too sensitive. When you can feel every broken heart within a 100-foot radius, it's hard to pretend everything's fine. So I became invisible. The Omega who worked in the pack library, cataloging books no one read, staying quiet during gatherings, eating meals alone while stronger wolves laughed and bonded and built the kind of life I'd never have. I made peace with it. Or at least, I learned to bury the howling loneliness deep enough that I could breathe around it. Until the night Alpha King Luther arrived, and everything I'd carefully built came crashing down. The Silver Pine Pack had been preparing for weeks. Our Alpha, Gregory, a decent leader but politically weak, was being evaluated. The king made these tours every few years, inspecting packs, ensuring loyalty, occasionally absorbing weaker territories into stronger ones, for the good of the kingdom. Everyone knew what it really meant. Prove your worth or disappear. The unmated females had been preening for days. The Alpha King had no Luna, no mate. Rumor said his fated mate had died 3 years ago, leaving him unmated and incomplete. Every she-wolf in the territory saw opportunity. I wasn't part of the competition. Omegas didn't marry Alpha Kings. We were lucky if we married at all. The night of the king's arrival, I was assigned to kitchen duty, scrubbing pots, staying invisible, which suited me perfectly. The less attention I drew, the safer I was. But then Brandy found me. Brandy Mason, my half-sister from my father's second mating. Beautiful, powerful, with a silver wolf that made grown males whimper. Everything I wasn't. "There you are." Her voice dripped honey and venom. She stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a dress that cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. "Father wants you in the Great Hall." My hands stilled in the wash water. "Why?" "The king requested entertainment. Something authentic." She examined her nails, each painted blood red. "Father thought you might sing for us. You have a pretty voice when you're not whimpering." The elderly cook beside me inhaled sharply. Ice crawled down my spine. "Brandy, I can't. It's not a request, Nina." My name in her mouth sounded like a curse. "Unless you'd prefer Father explain to the Alpha King why his Omega daughter refuses a direct command during a formal visit." We both knew what that meant. Insubordination during a royal inspection could mean execution, or worse, expulsion. An Omega alone in the territories wouldn't survive a week. "What does he want me to sing?" I asked, though I already knew, already felt the trap closing. Brandy's smile was beautiful and terrible. "The Luna hymn, of course." The Luna hymn was sacred, performed only by mated females, only by Lunas and high-ranking she-wolves. It was a song of power and fertility, of the moon goddess's blessing on complete unions. Having me, unmated, Omega, wrong in every way that mattered, sing it was a mockery, a joke wrapped in cruelty. 20 minutes later, I stood at the edge of the great hall in my kitchen dress, stained with grease and soap. The room was magnificent, vaulted ceilings painted with pack history, long tables laden with food. Everywhere, the scent of power. Wolves in human form barely contained. And at the head table, him, Alpha King Luther Ellison. I'd heard descriptions, but nothing prepared me for the reality. He wasn't handsome in any conventional way. His face was too harsh, carved from stone and shadow. His eyes were the color of winter storms, pale gray and pitiless. Dark hair pulled back to expose features that looked incapable of softness. He wore power like a second skin. Every wolf in the room oriented toward him unconsciously, the way flowers turn toward sun. When those storm-gray eyes locked onto me, my breath caught. "Ah, there she is." My father's voice boomed across the hall, artificially jovial. "Your Majesty, may I present my daughter? She has a certain talent for music." "We thought," Alpha Gregory interjected with a conspiratorial grin, "that Your Majesty might enjoy hearing the Luna hymn. It's traditional, sacred." Someone snickered. The sound rippled through the hall like blood in water. I understood then. They weren't asking me to sing. They were asking me to humiliate myself for the king's entertainment. The Alpha King's expression didn't change. Blank. Waiting. I should have refused, should have thrown myself at my father's feet and begged. But then I felt it. That familiar pull of awareness, my ability flaring to life under stress. I looked at the king, really looked, the way I'd learned not to, and I saw his mate bond, or rather, where it used to be. There was scar tissue at his throat, where the mating gland should pulse with golden light, but instead of warmth, there was just nothing. A wound that had healed over but never properly closed. The thread that should have connected him to his dead mate was gone, yes, but it hadn't just faded naturally. It had been severed, cut clean through with something sharp and deliberate. Someone had murdered the king's mate with magic and made it look like a natural death. The revelation hit me so hard I swayed on my feet. My voice came out barely a whisper. The king leaned forward slightly. Those winter eyes sharpened. I had two choices: sing the hymn and survive the humiliation, or speak the truth and possibly die for it. I'd spent 11 years being silent, being safe. I was so tired of being silent. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice cutting through the whispers. "I apologize, but I must ask." I swallowed hard. "When was the last time you felt your mate bond? Because I don't sense it anymore. It's gone. And not naturally. Someone cut it." The great hall erupted into chaos. Chapter 2. The Omega Who Became a Threat. The silence that followed my words was absolute. Then everything happened at once. My father lunged toward me, face purple with rage. "How dare you speak to— Silence!" The king's voice was quiet, soft even. Every wolf in the room froze like he'd used Alpha command. Luther stood slowly, his movements precise and controlled, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists. When he spoke again, his voice was still that terrible, gentle calm. What did you just say? I should have backtracked, should have claimed I misspoke, that I was confused, that Omegas were known for saying foolish things under stress. But I'd seen the truth written in the scar tissue of his bond, and I couldn't unsee it. Your mate bond was severed, Your Majesty. Cut through with something sharp, magic, I think. It wasn't a natural death. My voice steadied as I spoke. I can see mate bonds. I've always been able to. And yours, someone murdered it. Heresy, someone whispered. Impossible, another voice added. Only the moon goddess can see bonds. Enough. The king descended from the head table, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous hall. He moved toward me with predatory grace, and every instinct screamed at me to run. I held my ground. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Tall enough to block out the rest of the room, broad enough to make me feel impossibly small. He smelled like winter storms and old forests, and something darker that made my human instincts scream danger. You can see mate bonds, he said, not a question. Yes, Your Majesty. Prove it. He gestured to the room. Tell me something you couldn't possibly know. I looked past him at the assembled wolves, at the threads of light and shadow connecting bonded pairs. Most glowed healthy gold, but some... The beta's mate, I said, nodding toward Raymond, my father's second in command. Her bond has been sick for 6 months. There's a gray patch near her heart. She's been having chest pains, hasn't she? Trouble breathing? Raymond's face went white. His mate Gail gasped and clutched her chest. How could you? We told no one. The High Councilman's bond is fraying, I continued, my voice gaining strength. Give it another year and it'll snap completely. His mate will leave him, though she doesn't know it yet. And the alpha... I looked at Gregory. His bond is strong, but there's a hairline crack forming. Recent, within the last month. Gregory's hand went unconsciously to his mating gland. His mate, Katrina, had been distant lately. I'd noticed her moving into a separate bedroom. The hall had gone deathly quiet. The king stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. How long have you been able to do this? Since I was 6, Your Majesty. I watched my mother's bond rot from the inside. Gray, then black, then it snapped. 3 days later, she walked into the forest and never came back. Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding. Or maybe recognition. Your Majesty. Alpha Gregory stepped forward, his voice placating. The girl is clearly disturbed. Omegas are known for delusions. She's not delusional. The king's voice cut like a blade. She's dangerous. My stomach dropped. Guards, he said calmly. Arrest her. 2 massive wolves in royal guard uniforms seized my arms before I could react. Your Majesty, please, my father started. Your daughter has just confessed to possessing forbidden magic, Luther said, his tone conversational. Bond sight was outlawed 300 years ago. Those who possess it are to be brought to the capital for questioning. He turned those winter storm eyes on me. The penalty for using forbidden magic is death, unless, of course, she cooperates fully with the investigation. Investigation into what? I managed to ask, even as the guard's grip tightened. Into who murdered my mate. His voice dropped so low only I could hear it. And how many others they've killed. My breath caught. Others? We'll discuss it at the Capitol. He raised his voice, addressing the room. The girl comes with me. Consider it payment for the insult of trying to mock your king with a sacred hymn performed by an unmated Omega. Brandy's face had gone pale. This wasn't how her joke was supposed to end. My father looked torn between relief at being rid of me and fear of the political implications. Your Majesty is most gracious, Alpha Gregory said quickly. We apologize for any offense. Your pack is on probation, Luther interrupted. I'll return in 6 months to reevaluate your leadership. Disappoint me again, and Silverpine will be absorbed into the Northern Territories. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then the king turned and walked toward the exit. The guards dragged me after him, my feet barely touching the ground. I caught one last glimpse of the great hall, Brandy's shocked face, my father's carefully blank expression, the assembled wolves whispering frantically. Then the doors slammed shut, and my old life ended. They threw me into a carriage, not the king's elegant transport, but a prisoner wagon with iron bars and no cushions. I landed hard on the wooden floor, my kitchen dress tearing at the knee. The wagon lurched into motion immediately. Through the bars, I watched Silver Pine territory fade into darkness. I should have been terrified, should have been weeping over my fate. Instead, I felt oddly calm, numb, maybe, or possibly in shock. The carriage ride lasted for hours, long enough for night to deepen, for the adrenaline to fade, for reality to settle cold and heavy in my chest. I was being taken to the capital to be questioned about forbidden magic. The penalty was death. But the king had said unless I cooperated, which meant he needed something from me. The wagon finally stopped. I heard voices outside, the sound of gates opening. Then the door swung wide, and rough hands pulled me out. I expected the palace, expected something grand. Instead, I found myself in a dark courtyard surrounded by high stone walls. The air smelled damp, underground. "Move," one of the guards grunted, shoving me toward a heavy iron door. We descended a staircase carved from living rock, down, 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 until the air turned cold and the walls began to weep moisture. The royal dungeons. They led me through a maze of corridors lit by guttering torches. I heard sounds echoing from distant cells, moans, whispers, the rattle of chains. Finally, they stopped before a cell at the end of a long hallway. The guard unlocked it, shoved me inside, and slammed the door shut. The lock clicked with terrible finality. I was alone in the dark. I'm not sure how long I sat there, long enough for my eyes to adjust to the dim light filtering through a crack in the stone ceiling, long enough to realize the cell was cleaner than I expected. No blood, no filth, just bare stone and a thin mattress in the corner. Long enough to start wondering if the king actually planned to question me, or if he'd just leave me here to rot. Then I heard footsteps, slow, measured, a single person approaching. A figure emerged from the shadows, and I recognized him immediately. Alpha King Luther stood outside my cell, alone. No guards, no witnesses. He studied me through the bars, his expression unreadable. "How long have you been able to see them dying?" he asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. Not how many bonds can you see or prove your ability. How long have you been watching them die? 11 years, I whispered, since my mother. He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something. And you've told no one? People don't want to hear that their perfect mate bond is rotting from the inside. They'd rather kill the messenger. I met his eyes. You're going to kill me anyway, so why the questions? Because you saw something no one else has seen in 3 years. He stepped closer to the bars. My mate, Elsa. She died of a sudden illness. Healers said it was natural, rare but natural, a weakness in her heart that finally gave out. But you didn't believe them. I felt the bond snap, he said, his voice rough. It didn't fade. It didn't weaken over time. One moment it was there, whole and strong. The next, his hand went to his throat, gone, like someone had taken scissors and cut the thread. That's exactly what happened, I said. I can see the scar tissue. It's clean. Too clean for a natural death. His jaw tightened. Who? Who would have the power to sever a mate bond? I don't know. I've never seen it done deliberately before. I hesitated. But, Your Majesty, your mate isn't the only one. He went very still. What? In that hall tonight, I saw 3 other wolves with old severance scars, bonds that were cut, not broken naturally, and another 6 with bonds that are actively dying, the same gray-black rot I saw in my mother. The color drained from his face. How many total? In your kingdom? I don't know. I'd have to see them all to be sure. I gripped the bars. But if someone has the power to sever mate bonds and they're using it, Your Majesty, this isn't just about your mate. This is about dozens, maybe hundreds of wolves. Luther stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked my cell door. It swung open with a creak. "What are you doing?" I asked warily. "Giving you a choice." He stepped back, leaving the door wide. "You can stay here and rot while I try to investigate this alone. Or you can help me find who killed Elsa, and everyone else whose bonds had been severed." "And if I help you?" "Then you're not a prisoner. You're—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "An asset, protected by royal decree. No one can harm you, speak against you, or question your presence." It wasn't freedom, but it was better than death. "What exactly would I have to do?" I asked. "Attend pack gatherings, read bonds, find patterns." His eyes were hard. "Help me hunt the person who's murdering wolves with magic and making it look natural." I stepped out of the cell slowly, testing whether this was real. "Why me?" I asked. "Why not find another bond seer?" His smile was bitter. "Because according to every record in the royal archives, bond seers were hunted to extinction 300 years ago. The last known one was executed for heresy." He looked at me. "You're supposed to be impossible, Nina, and yet here you stand." The weight of that settled over me. I was the last of a dead bloodline, the only one who could see what was killing us. "I'll help you," I said, "on one condition." His eyebrows rose. "You're negotiating with a king?" "You need me alive and cooperative, so yes." I met his gaze steadily. "When this is over, when we find who's severing bonds, you let me go. No execution for forbidden magic, no imprisonment. Freedom." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "You have my word, Nina. Help me find the killer, and you'll have your freedom." I shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and sent an unexpected jolt through me that had nothing to do with magic. "Then let's hunt," I said. Chapter 3. The Silver Carafe That Killed 40 Wolves. The king didn't return me to the dungeons. Instead, he led me through a maze of corridors that gradually transformed from rough stone to polished marble. We climbed stairs, passed through guarded doorways, and finally emerged into a section of the palace that actually looked livable. "These are the guest quarters," Luther said, stopping before a heavy wooden door. "You'll stay here. Meals will be brought, clothing provided. A guard will be posted outside, for your protection, not imprisonment." I looked at him skeptically. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "If I wanted you imprisoned, Nina, you'd still be in the cell. This is—" He paused. "Consider it a professional arrangement. You're consulting on a sensitive matter. You'll be treated accordingly." He opened the door, revealing a room that made my breath catch. It wasn't enormous, but compared to my cramped space back in Silverpine, it was a palace. A real bed with clean linens, a desk, bookshelves, a window overlooking the gardens. "We start tomorrow," Luther said. "There's a gathering of the northern packs, 20 alphas and their mates, all attending a trade summit. You'll observe, take notes, tell me what you see. And if I see more severed bonds, then we'll know this is bigger than I feared." His expression darkened. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." He left before I could ask what he meant by that. I didn't sleep. How could I? My entire world had shifted in the span of 6 hours. This morning I'd been invisible, safe in my insignificance. Now I was hunting a killer who could sever the most sacred bond in wolf nature. I spent the night pacing, testing the boundaries of my new reality. The door was unlocked. The guard outside nodded respectfully when I peeked out. No chains, no bars, just a gilded cage with better amenities. As dawn broke, a servant arrived with clothing, simple but well-made, in shades of gray and cream. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. "The king requests your presence in the East Hall at midday," she said, setting down a breakfast tray. "I'm to help you prepare." Her name was Tammy, and she was kind in that careful way servants had around people whose status was uncertain. She helped me bathe, dressed my hair into a simple braid, and gave me advice in quiet whispers. "The Northern Alphas are traditional," she murmured as she fastened buttons. "They don't like change, don't like outsiders, and they especially don't like Omegas who speak out of turn." "Good thing I'm not planning to speak at all," I said. She met my eyes in the mirror. "The king wouldn't have brought you if he didn't intend to use you. Be careful, miss. Politics in this palace are sharper than claws." The East Hall was magnificent, all soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers. When I arrived, 20 alphas and their lunas were already assembled, arranged in a loose circle around a massive table laden with maps and trade documents. I recognized the type immediately. Powerful wolves, used to dominance and deference, the kind who saw Omegas as furniture. Luther stood at the head of the table, dressed in formal black, every inch the commanding king. When he saw me enter, something flickered in his eyes. "Ah, my consultant has arrived." He gestured me forward. "This is Nina. She'll be observing today's proceedings." 20 pairs of eyes turned to assess me. Most dismissed me immediately. Just an Omega, nothing to worry about. But a few looked longer, calculating. "Your Majesty," one of the alphas said carefully, "forgive me, but what exactly is she consulting on?" "Pack dynamics," Luther replied smoothly. "I'm conducting a study on mate bond stability across territories. Nina has a unique talent for reading emotional states. She'll simply observe and report her findings." It was close enough to the truth to pass. The meeting began. Trade routes, border disputes, resource allocation, all the tedious machinery of keeping a kingdom running. I stood against the wall and did what I did best. Watched. And what I saw made my stomach turn. Of the 20 mated pairs in this room, 6 had compromised bonds. Not severed, not yet, but sick. Dying. The same gray-black rot I'd seen in my mother spreading through golden threads like infection through healthy tissue. I pulled out the small notebook Luther had given me and began taking notes, discreetly marking which wolves were affected. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze. One of the Lunas, Amanda, mate to Alpha Derek from the Eastern Territories, had a bond that was actively being severed. Right now, in real time. The thread connecting her to her mate was fraying at the edges, tiny filaments breaking away like spider silk in wind. And she had no idea. She sat there discussing grain tariffs while her soul connection died. I looked around the room frantically, trying to see who was doing it. Bond severance required proximity and power. The killer had to be here. But everyone looked normal. Bored, mostly. A few checking pocket watches. One alpha stifling a yawn. Then I felt it. A pulse of magic so subtle I almost missed it. Not coming from a person. Coming from an object. My eyes tracked the source to the center of the table, where an ornate silver carafe sat among the refreshments. It was beautiful, etched with wolves and moons. Everyone had been drinking from it, including Amanda, whose cup sat half empty at her elbow. Oh, gods. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice cutting through a discussion about lumber exports. The room fell silent. Luther's eyes snapped to me. "Yes?" I walked forward on shaking legs and picked up the carafe. It was warm to the touch, thrumming with barely perceptible energy. "No one drink from this," I said. "What are you?" Alpha Derek started. "It's poisoned." I set it down carefully. "Not with anything that kills the body, with something that kills bonds." The room erupted. "Absurd. How dare you accuse? Your Majesty, this Omega is clearly—" "Silence." Luther's command voice rolled through the hall like thunder. Everyone froze. He looked at me. "Explain." "The carafe is enchanted. There's magic woven through the silver. I can feel it. Everyone who drank from it—" I turned to Amanda. "My lady, have you been feeling strange lately? Disconnected from your mate? Like something's missing but you can't name what?" Her face had gone pale. "How did you—" "Yes. For the past hour, I thought it was just stress." "It's not stress. Your bond is fraying. Look." I don't know what possessed me, Desperation, maybe, or the need to prove I wasn't insane. But I reached out and touched her mating gland. The moment my fingers made contact, I felt the bond snap into my awareness like a physical thing. And because I was touching her, she felt it too. Amanda gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Derek, I can't feel you." Her mate was across the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms. But even I could see the thread between them was damaged, barely holding. "6 others drank from that carafe," I said, turning to face the room. "You're all compromised. The bond damage is reversible if we act now, but if we wait—" "How do we stop it?" Luther demanded. "I don't know. I can see bonds, not heal them." Frustration burned in my chest. "We need a healer, someone who works with mate magic." "The High Priestess," one of the Lunas said quickly. "Teresa, she's in the Temple District." "Bring her, now." Luther's eyes were hard. "And someone secure that carafe. I want it examined by every magic specialist in the capital." Guards rushed to obey. The meeting dissolved into chaos, affected wolves being ushered out, their mates frantic, everyone talking at once. Luther pulled me aside, his grip firm on my elbow. "How did you know?" he asked quietly. "I saw Amanda's bond actively fraying. Then I felt the magic pulse from the carafe." I met his eyes. "Your Majesty, this wasn't random. Someone placed that carafe here specifically. They knew these alphas would be meeting today. They're targeting leadership." His jaw tightened. "This is an act of war. Or a very precise assassination attempt." I glanced at the wolves being escorted out. 6 bonds damaged in one meeting. If the High Priestess can't reverse it, that's 6 alphas who'll lose their mates, 6 packs destabilized, and 6 territories ripe for takeover by whoever orchestrated this. Luther's eyes were cold with fury. Someone is systematically destroying the kingdom's leadership structure. A thought occurred to me. "Your Majesty, when your mate died, were you at a formal gathering beforehand?" He went very still. "Yes, a council meeting. We had refreshments brought in." "From a silver service?" His face answered before his words did. "An ornate carafe, gift from the Southern Territories." We stared at each other as the implications crashed down. "It's been happening for years," I whispered. "They've been poisoning mate bonds at formal gatherings, killing Lunas and making it look natural. Your mate wasn't the first. She was just one of many." "Then we find who's supplying the carafes," Luther said, his voice deadly calm. "And we burn them to ash." The High Priestess arrived within the hour. Teresa was ancient, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. She took one look at the affected wolves, and her expression turned grim. "Bond poison," she confirmed. "Old magic, forbidden for good reason." She began pulling vials and herbs from her bag. "I can slow the damage, maybe reverse some of it, but if any of these bonds were already weak—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I watched her work, fascinated despite the horror. She chanted in a language I didn't recognize, pressing crystals to mating glands, burning herbs that made my eyes water. Slowly, painfully, the gray rot began to recede. 4 of the 6 bonds stabilized. 2 didn't. One of those belonged to Amanda. "I'm sorry," Teresa said quietly, stepping back from the sobbing Luna. "The damage was too extensive. The bond is dying. You have perhaps a week before it severs completely." Derek held his mate while she wept. The sound was awful, raw and broken and utterly hopeless. I looked away, unable to bear it. "Can nothing be done?" Luther demanded. Teresa shook her head. "Once bond rot reaches critical stage, only 2 things can stop it. A miracle from the moon goddess herself, or—" She hesitated. "Or what?" "Or a moon-sighted healer." The priestess's voice was barely a whisper. "One who can not only see bonds, but repair them. But the last moon-sighted died 3 centuries ago." Every eye in the room turned to me. "I can see bonds," I said quickly, "but I can't heal them. I've never even tried." "You've also never been taught," Teresa said, studying me with new intensity. Child, do you know what you are? An omega with forbidden magic? You're moon-sighted. She stepped closer, her ancient eyes boring into mine. The moon goddess's chosen, born once every 1,000 years to maintain the balance of bonds, to heal what's broken, to see what others can't. That's impossible, I breathed. So was surviving bondsight for 17 years without being discovered. Luther's voice was quiet. Nina, if there's even a chance you can heal Amanda's bond, I don't know how. Then learn. He gestured to Teresa. Teach her, whatever it takes. The high priestess looked between us, then at Amanda's dying bond, then back to me. Very well, she said finally, but understand, this is not a gentle magic. To heal a bond, you must first touch its wound, feel its pain, carry its burden. Her expression was grave. It will hurt you, child, possibly break you. Are you willing? I looked at Amanda, at Derek, at the shattered hope in their eyes. I thought of my mother, walking into the forest with a severed bond. Teach me, I said. Chapter 4. I swallowed the poison. Meant for her. Teresa led me to the palace temple, a small stone chapel tucked away from the main halls. Candles flickered everywhere, casting dancing shadows on walls carved with phases of the moon. Amanda and Derek followed, desperate hope written on their faces. Sit, Teresa commanded, gesturing to a circular space in the center of the room. Amanda obeyed immediately, her mate kneeling beside her. The high priestess turned to me. What I'm about to teach you goes against every instinct you have. To heal a bond, you must become part of it. Merge your consciousness with the connection between mates and repair the damage from the inside. That sounds dangerous, I said. It is. If you're not strong enough, the bond will consume you. You'll become trapped, lost in someone else's connection, unable to find your way back to yourself. Her eyes were hard. Moon-sighted healers used to train for years before attempting this. You have minutes. No pressure, I muttered. The alternative is Amanda loses her mate and possibly her sanity. Teresa pulled me toward the circle. Now, place your hands on both their mating glands, close your eyes, and reach for the bond. I knelt before the couple, my heart hammering. Derek watched me with barely contained fear. Amanda just looked broken. I'll try, I said softly, but I've never done this before. If it doesn't work, then we're no worse off than we are now, Amanda whispered. Please, just try. I took a breath and placed my right hand on Amanda's throat, my left on Derek's. The moment contact was made, their bond slammed into my awareness like a physical blow. It wasn't just sight anymore, it was sensation. Every emotion they felt for each other flooding through me in overwhelming waves. Love and frustration and desire and disappointment and hope and fear, all tangled together in a knot so complex I couldn't tell where one feeling ended and another began. And beneath it all, the rot, the poison eating through their connection like acid through silk. Focus. Teresa's voice cut through the chaos. Find the wound. See where the damage starts. I pushed deeper, following the thread of their bond backward through time, past arguments and reconciliations, past passion and tenderness, past the moment they'd first recognized each other as mates. There. A black stain spreading from a single point, the moment Amanda had drunk from the poisoned carafe. The magic was still active, still chewing through healthy bond tissue, converting gold to gray to black. Now what? I thought desperately. Now you pull it out, Teresa said. Grab the poison and rip it free. How? However you can. Not helpful. But there was no time to learn technique. Amanda's bond was minutes from complete severance. I reached for the black stain with something that wasn't quite hands, some projection of will and intention made manifest through the bond itself. The poison fought back. It wrapped around my consciousness like thorns, digging in, trying to pull me deeper into the rot. I felt it searching for my own bonds, my own connections, trying to sever them too. But I had no mate bond to attack, no connection to anyone that ran soul deep. I was alone, empty, nothing. And for the first time in my life, that emptiness was an advantage. The poison couldn't grip what wasn't there. I grabbed hold of the black stain and yanked with everything I had. Pain exploded through me, not physical but something worse. The agony of a dying connection, the grief of two souls being torn apart, the despair of losing the one person who completed you. I screamed. Distantly, I heard Teresa shouting something, felt hands trying to pull me away, but I held on, pulled harder. The poison resisted, clinging to healthy tissue like a parasite refusing to release its host. So I did the only thing I could think of. I absorbed it, drew the black rot into myself, into my own emptiness, let it fill the void where my bonds should have been. It burned. Gods, it burned like swallowing fire. But slowly, agonizingly, the poison transferred from Amanda's bond into me. Gold returned where black had been. The fraying stopped. The connection stabilized. When the last trace of rot left her thread and entered my body, I finally let go. I collapsed backward, gasping, shaking, my skin cold with sweat. "Nina!" Luther's voice, sharp with concern. When had he arrived? "Is she—" Amanda's voice, thick with tears. "The bond is healing," Teresa said, wonder in her tone. "She did it. She actually pulled the poison out." "But where did it go?" Derek demanded. Silence. Then Teresa's hand touched my forehead, and I felt her awareness brush against mine, felt her sense what I'd done. "Oh, child," she whispered, "you took it into yourself." Luther knelt beside me, his face swimming in my blurred vision. "What does that mean?" "It means the poison that was killing Amanda's bond is now inside Nina." Teresa's voice was heavy. "Eating at her instead." "But she doesn't have a mate bond." "It doesn't matter. Bond poison doesn't just attack connections. It attacks the capacity for connection." The priestess looked at me with something like pity. "If we don't purge it from her system, it will destroy her ability to ever form a bond. She'll be truly alone, forever." The words should have terrified me, but I was too exhausted to feel anything except a distant sort of resignation. "Can you purge it?" Luther asked. "I can try, but it will take time, days, maybe weeks." Teresa began pulling items from her bag. "And even if I succeed, there may be permanent damage." "Do it." The king's command was absolute. I wanted to protest, wanted to say I'd known the risks, that it was my choice. But darkness was already creeping in at the edges of my vision, and the pain was a living thing in my chest, clawing and burning. The last thing I heard before unconsciousness claimed me was Amanda's voice, thick with tears. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I woke in darkness. For a terrifying moment I thought I'd gone blind. Then I realized I was back in the guest room, curtains drawn, only a single candle burning on the bedside table. My body felt like one massive bruise. "You're awake." Luther's voice came from the shadows. I turned my head, even that small movement hurt, and found him sitting in a chair beside the bed. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his hair disheveled. "How long?" I croaked. "2 days." He poured water from a pitcher and helped me sit up enough to drink. "Teresa has been purging the poison. Says you'll live, but it was close." The water was cool and perfect. I drained the cup. "Amanda?" "Her bond is stable. Healing. She and Derek wanted to thank you personally, but I told them you needed rest." His gray eyes studied me. "That was incredibly foolish, Nina." "It worked, didn't it?" "You almost died." "But I didn't." I met his gaze. "And now we know I can heal bonds. That has to be useful for the investigation." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Teresa says what you did, absorbing the poison, isn't standard moon-sighted technique. She says you improvised something that should have been impossible." "I didn't have anything for the poison to attack," I said. "No bonds of my own. So I just became a container for it." "That's not how magic works." "Apparently it is now." I tried to sit up further and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through my chest. Luther's hands were there instantly, supporting me, adjusting pillows. His touch was surprisingly gentle for someone who radiated such lethal power. "You need to rest," he said firmly. "The investigation can wait." "Can it?" I challenged. "How many wolves drank from poisoned carafes at other gatherings? How many bonds are dying right now while we waste time?" His jaw tightened. "I have people investigating the carafe's origin. We'll find the source." "And when you do, will you have anyone who can heal the victims?" I shook my head. "You need me functional, Your Majesty, so tell me what you've learned while I was unconscious." For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then he sighed and pulled a folder from the table beside him. The carafe came from a supplier in the Southern Territories, a metalsmith named Jonathan Blake. My guards went to question him. Luther's expression darkened. They found his shop burned to the ground, his body inside, made to look like an accident. Someone's cleaning up loose ends. Yes, but before the shop burned, my guards found records. Orders for similar carafes going back 5 years, delivered to noble houses, pack halls, even the royal palace. He opened the folder, showing me a list of names. 37 carafes total, all purchased by different wolves, all delivered to locations where mate-bonded leadership congregated. The scope of it stole my breath. 37. That's not random attacks, that's systematic. "That's genocide," Luther corrected coldly. "Someone is trying to destroy the mate-bonded ruling class from the inside." I studied the list. "Do you have dates for when each carafe was delivered?" "Most of them, yes. Cross-reference with deaths. Any Luna or Alpha who died of natural causes or mysterious illness in the weeks following delivery." Luther's eyes widened slightly. "You think—" "I think every carafe was a weapon, and I think if we map the deaths against the deliveries, we'll see the pattern." I pushed myself fully upright, ignoring the way my vision swam. "Do it now, please." He wanted to argue. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders, but instead he pulled out several more folders and spread papers across the bed. We worked in silence, marking dates, drawing connections. The pattern emerged within an hour. 23 deaths, all high-ranking wolves, all within 30 days of a poisoned carafe being delivered to their location. "Gods," Luther breathed. 23 murders made to look natural. "And 14 carafes that haven't resulted in deaths yet," I added, pointing to the remaining entries. "Either they haven't been used, or the victims are still in early stages of bond rot. We need to warn them. Send healers. We need to find who's orchestrating this." I met his eyes. "Your Majesty, this level of coordination, this many territories? Someone powerful is behind it, someone with resources and connections, and a very specific goal: to destroy mate-bonded leadership." "Why?" I asked. "What do they gain?" Luther was quiet, thinking. Then his expression shifted to something like horror. "Omegas," he said quietly. "What?" "The current wolf hierarchy is built on mate bonds. Alphas bond with Lunas and produce heirs. That bonded pair leads the pack." He looked at me. "But what happens if mate bonds become unreliable, if they can be poisoned and severed?" Understanding crashed down. The entire power structure collapses, and in the chaos new hierarchies form, based on different criteria. His voice was grim. "Nina, what if this isn't about destroying leadership? What if it's about rebuilding society?" "That's insane." "Is it?" He gestured to the papers. 23 dead, 14 more compromised. How many more carafes are out there that we haven't found? How many bonds are secretly poisoned, waiting to snap? I thought about the coalition that must exist. Wolves coordinating this conspiracy across territories, maintaining secrecy for 5 years, systematically dismantling the old order. "They'd need a leader," I said. "Someone charismatic enough to recruit followers. Someone who believes they're doing the right thing." "Someone who's been hurt by mate bonds," Luther added. someone who sees them as chains instead of blessings. We stared at each other as the implications spread like poison through water. This wasn't just murder, it was revolution, and I was caught in the middle of it. Chapter 5. The goddess told me I was never supposed to exist. 3 days after I woke, Teresa declared me well enough to leave the room. "The poison is purged," she said, pressing a hand to my chest. "But there's scarring. Your bond capacity is diminished." "What does that mean?" Luther asked sharply. He'd been present for every one of Teresa's examinations, watching with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "It means if she ever meets a fated mate, the bond will be weaker than normal. Fragile." The priestess looked at me with sympathy. "You sacrificed part of yourself to save Amanda. That kind of magic always has a cost." I should have felt devastated, should have mourned the loss of something I'd never had. Instead, I felt oddly relieved. A weak bond was better than being consumed by one, better than what I'd seen happen to my mother. "I can still see bonds?" I asked. "Yes, and heal them, though I'd advise extreme caution." Teresa packed her supplies. "Your Majesty, she needs rest, real rest, not more investigations and stress." "She'll have it," Luther promised. The priestess left. Luther remained. "You don't have to stay," I said, pulling a robe tighter around myself. "I'm sure you have kingdom business." "The kingdom can wait." He settled into the chair he'd apparently claimed as his. "We need to discuss next steps." "Next steps?" "The investigation. You were right. We need to find the coalition's leader." His gray eyes were calculating. "And I think I know how." I waited. "There's a gathering in 2 weeks, the Lunar Festival. Every major pack sends representatives. It's the largest congregation of wolves in the kingdom, over 300 attendees." My stomach dropped. "You think the coalition will strike there?" "I think it's the perfect opportunity. Maximum casualties, maximum chaos." He leaned forward. "And maximum chance for us to catch them in the act." "You want to use the festival as bait?" "I want to use it as a trap." His voice was hard. "We'll have healers standing by, guards in position, and you reading every bond in that hall, watching for anyone who shows signs of poison or severing magic." "Your Majesty, I've never tried to monitor that many bonds at once. I don't know if I can—" "You held Amanda's entire dying bond inside yourself for 2 days," he interrupted. "You can do this." The confidence in his voice steadied something in me. "What if I miss something?" I asked quietly. "What if people die because I'm not fast enough?" Luther stood and crossed to the bed, sitting on its edge so we were at eye level. "Then people die," he said bluntly, "and we catch the killer anyway. Nina, you're not responsible for saving everyone. You're responsible for doing your best. That's all anyone can ask." The words should have been cold, clinical, but delivered in his rough voice, they felt like permission to be human. "I'll do it," I said, "but I need something from you." His eyebrow rose. "Another condition?" "Information." I met his gaze. "Your mate, Elsa. Tell me about her." The shutters came down immediately. His expression went blank, carefully neutral. "Why?" "Because her death was the first in this pattern. Understanding what happened to her might help us understand the coalition's goals." I softened my voice. "And because you've been taking care of me for days. The least I can do is listen if you want to talk about her." For a long moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then slowly, painfully, he began to speak. "We were mated young, 18. It was expected. She was the previous Alpha King's niece. I was his chosen heir. Our bond was politically advantageous." His voice was flat, reciting facts. "We did our duty, attended functions, presented a united front." "But," I prompted gently, "but we didn't love each other." The admission came quiet and raw. The bond was there, real, but love? That never came. We were cordial, respectful, and completely wrong for each other. This wasn't what I'd expected. Then why do you want to find her killer so badly? Because she deserved better than dying alone and confused, her bond severed by poison while I was in meetings. His hands clenched into fists. Because duty or not, she was mine to protect, and I failed. You didn't know. I should have. His gray eyes were bleak. The day she died, she told me she felt strange, disconnected. I thought she was just tired, told her to rest, and that night... He stopped, jaw working. Her bond snapped. I finished quietly. I felt it tear, felt her life end, and I couldn't do anything except stand there and scream. He looked at his hands like they'd betrayed him. They tell you mate bonds are beautiful, a blessing from the moon goddess, but they don't tell you what it feels like when one dies violently, like having your soul cut in half with a rusty blade. I reached out without thinking and covered his clenched fist with my hand. He stared at the contact like he'd forgotten what comfort felt like. "I'm sorry," I said. "For her, for you, for all of it." "Don't be sorry for me. Be angry with me." His voice turned bitter. "I was relieved, Nina. When the bond finally finished dying, when the pain stopped, I was relieved. What kind of monster feels relief when their mate dies?" "The kind who was trapped in a bond that wasn't working," I said firmly. "Your Majesty, Luther, not all mate bonds are love matches. Some are just obligations that happen to be soul deep. Being relieved doesn't make you a monster. It makes you honest." He looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. "How do you know so much about bonds when you've never had one?" "Because I've watched them my whole life, seen the beautiful ones and the broken ones, and everything in between." I squeezed his hand gently. "Most people only experience their own bond. I've experienced hundreds through observation, and I've learned. Mate bonds are just another kind of relationship. Some are wonderful. Some are terrible. Most are complicated." "That's heresy," he said, but there was no heat in it. "So is bondsight. I'm already damned." I offered a small smile. "Might as well be honest while I'm at it." He almost laughed. Almost. Then his expression turned serious again. "Nina, if we do this, if we set this trap at the festival, the coalition will know about you. They'll see you healing bonds, stopping their poison. You'll become a target." "I'm already a target. The moment I survived bondsight this long, I became dangerous to them." "I'll assign you a bodyguard, someone skilled." "No." I pulled my hand back. "A bodyguard will draw attention, make me look important and vulnerable. I need to blend in." "You're a bond-healing Omega at a festival full of wolves. You can't blend in." "Then we change my role." An idea was forming. "What if I'm not there as a healer? What if I'm there as your companion?" His eyes widened. "You want to pretend to be courting me?" "It would explain why you brought an Omega to a formal gathering, why you're keeping me close." I spoke quickly, thinking it through. "Everyone would assume you're finally moving on from your mate's death, looking for a new Luna. It's scandalous enough to be memorable, but not so suspicious that it raises questions." Luther was silent, considering. "The court would hate it," he said finally. "An unmated Omega pursuing the Alpha King? The gossip would be vicious." "Good. Let them gossip. Let them focus on scandal instead of investigation." I met his eyes. "Can you pretend to be interested in me for 2 weeks?" Something flickered across his face. "That won't be difficult." The words hung between us, heavier than they should have been. I cleared my throat. "Right. Well, then we have a plan." "We have a dangerous, possibly insane plan," he corrected. "But yes." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Nina, thank you." "For what?" "For listening, for not judging." He smiled slightly. "For being honest when everyone else tells me comfortable lies." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the ghost of warmth where his hand had touched mine. The next week passed in a blur of preparation, Teresa taught me techniques for monitoring multiple bonds simultaneously. Luther briefed me on festival protocol, on how to move through noble society without causing offense. And slowly, carefully, we began the pretense. It started small, Luther joining me for meals in the guest quarters, walking with me through the palace gardens while guards discreetly watched. The servants noticed immediately. Whispers spread like wildfire. The king and the Omega. He's forgotten his mate already. Disgraceful, scandalous, perfect. By the time formal invitations went out for the lunar festival, every wolf in the capital knew that Alpha King Luther was courting someone inappropriate. The conservative nobles were outraged. The younger wolves were fascinated. Everyone had an opinion. No one suspected we were hunting a killer. 3 days before the festival, something changed. I was in the library, my new sanctuary, when the vision hit. One moment I was reading about ancient bond magic. The next, I was somewhere else entirely. A temple, old, abandoned, moonlight streaming through broken windows. And a voice. Female, ancient, impossibly vast. "You hear me, child?" I spun, but there was no one there. Just moonlight and shadows, and that voice echoing through my bones. "What? Who are you?" I thought desperately. "You know who I am. You've carried my gift since birth." The moon goddess. Terror and awe crashed through me in equal measure. "Why are you speaking to me?" "Because you asked the right questions." The voice was amused. "About bonds, about fate, about whether my design is perfect or merely persistent." I didn't know what to say to that. The wolves who sever bonds, they call themselves the unbound. They believe mate bonds are prisons I've created to control my children. A pause. They're not entirely wrong. What? Mate bonds were my solution to a problem. Wolves killing each other in endless territorial disputes. I created bonds to force cooperation, to make peace profitable. The goddess's voice held something like regret. But solutions become cages when circumstances change, and now some of my children suffer under bonds that harm rather than heal. So you support the unbound? I support truth, and the truth is complex. Moonlight coalesced into a vaguely female shape. Some bonds are beautiful, some are prisons, most are both, depending on the day. But wholesale destruction of the bond system will cause more suffering than it prevents. Then what's the answer? Choice. The word resonated through the vision. Wolves should see their bond options, choose consciously rather than accepting fate blindly. But that requires someone who can show them their choices. Understanding dawned cold and heavy. You want me to do this, to give wolves the ability to see their bond options. I want you to be what you already are, moon-sighted, born once every 1,000 years to recalibrate my design. The goddess's form grew brighter. The unbound have the right goal but the wrong method. They destroy bonds. You can transform them. Give wolves freedom while maintaining connection. And if I refuse? Then the unbound will continue killing until the entire bond system collapses. Chaos will reign. Thousands will die. A pause. Or you can offer a third path, evolution instead of destruction. The vision began to fade. Wait, I called out. How do I do this? How do I show wolves their choices? The same way you heal bonds. Reach into the connection and expand it. Show them the threads they can't see. The voice was growing distant. But be warned, child. Once wolves know they have choices, they will choose. And not everyone will like what they choose. The library snapped back into focus. I was on the floor, gasping, my hands shaking. And I finally understood what I was supposed to do. The unbound wanted to free wolves by destroying bonds. The moon goddess wanted me to free wolves by expanding them. And I was caught between revolution and evolution, trying not to get killed by either side. Chapter 6. 8 assassins surrounded me at the festival. I told Luther about the vision that night. We were in his private study, a room I'd been granted access to as part of our pretense. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. "The moon goddess spoke to you directly," he said when I finished. Not a question, a statement heavy with implications. "Yes. And she wants you to, what? Give every wolf in the kingdom the ability to see alternative mate bonds?" He stood, pacing to the window. "That's not possible, that's revolutionary," I finished. "Yes, that's the point." "Nina, do you understand what you're suggesting? If wolves can see other bond options, every mating in the kingdom becomes questionable. Packs will fracture, families will dissolve, the entire social order is already dissolving," I interrupted. "The unbound are making sure of it. At least this way, we give wolves choice instead of just destruction." He turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd met him, Luther looked uncertain. "You're asking me to sanction the end of wolf society as we know it." "I'm asking you to let it evolve before the unbound burn it to ash." I moved closer. "Your Majesty, Luther, the old way is dying. We can resist and watch it die violently, or we can guide the change and maybe save some of what's worth keeping. And if I refuse? Then the unbound win. They'll keep poisoning bonds until no one trusts mate connections anymore. And when the foundation crumbles, they'll build something new on the rubble, something we have no control over." He was quiet for a long time, staring out at the moonlit gardens. "My father would have executed you for even suggesting this," he said finally. "I know. The council will call it heresy." "I know. And if it goes wrong, if wolves start abandoning good bonds for shiny new options, the chaos will be catastrophic." "I know." I stepped beside him at the window. "But if we do nothing, the catastrophe is guaranteed. At least this way we're trying." He looked at me then, his gray eyes searching my face. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why risk everything for this? You could just heal bonds quietly, stay safe, eventually earn your freedom. Why push for revolution?" I thought of my mother walking into the forest with a broken bond, of Amanda weeping over her dying connection, of Elsa dying, confused and alone because a bond that didn't work had been poisoned anyway. "Because I've spent 17 years watching wolves suffer under bonds they didn't choose and couldn't escape," I said, "and I'm tired of just watching. If I have this power, if I'm moon-sighted, then I should use it for something more than just patching wounds. I should use it to prevent them." Luther held my gaze for another moment. Then slowly he nodded. "All right, we'll do it your way. But," he held up a hand, "we start small. At the festival, you'll observe. Look for the unbound's agents. And if you see an opportunity to show someone their bond options safely, you take it. One person. As a test." "One person?" "Before we reshape society, we make sure the technique works without killing you or driving the recipient insane." His voice was firm. "Agreed?" It was a compromise, a reasonable one. "Agreed," I said. The lunar festival began 3 days later with a grandeur that stole my breath. The great hall had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Silver and white everywhere, crystals catching candlelight, flowers in shades of ivory and pearl. 300 wolves in formal attire, all glittering and powerful and dangerous. I wore a gown Luther had commissioned, simple but elegant, in shades of gray that made my eyes look darker. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed Omega pretending to be important. But the moment Luther offered his arm to escort me into the hall, every eye turned. The whispers started immediately. "Actually brought her. Disgraceful. His mate barely cold. What is he thinking?" Luther ignored them all, leading me to the head table with perfect composure. "Smile," he murmured. "We're supposed to be courting, remember?" I smiled. It felt plastic and wrong, but it would do. The feast began. 7 courses of elaborate food, wine flowing freely, toasts and speeches praising the moon goddess and pack unity. And through it all, I watched. Not just with my eyes, but with my gift. Let my awareness expand through the hall, touching bond after bond, cataloging what I saw. Most were healthy, golden threads pulsing with warmth and connection. But scattered throughout the crowd, 12 bonds showing early signs of rot, gray patches forming at the edges, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. 12 wolves who'd been poisoned and didn't know it yet. I made mental notes of their positions, their packs, their faces. Then I saw him, a male wolf in servant's livery, moving through the crowd with a silver tray of wine glasses. Unremarkable, forgettable, except he had no mate bond at all, no thread connecting him to anyone in the room. And when I looked closer, I saw the faint shimmer of magic around his hands. Active magic, the kind used for concealment or manipulation. I leaned close to Luther, my lips near his ear in a gesture that would look intimate to observers. Servant, dark hair, moving past the third column. He's using magic. Luther's expression didn't change, but I felt him tense. You're certain? Yes, and he has no bonds, none at all. That's not possible. Everyone has some connection, family, pack. Unless they've been severed, all of them. I watched the servant set down his tray and pick up an empty carafe. He's unbound. Can you tell what he's doing? I focused harder, following the thread of his magic. It led to... My blood froze. The wine fountain, I hissed. He just poisoned the wine fountain. Every glass being poured for the next hour would carry bond poison. Luther moved so fast I barely tracked it. He was across the room in heartbeats, his alpha command voice ringing out, "Nobody drink the wine!" The hall froze. Your Majesty? Alpha Gregory looked confused. What? The fountain is poisoned, bond poison. Everyone put down your glasses, now. Chaos erupted, wolves shouting, glasses shattering, guards rushing forward, and the servant, the unbound agent, bolted for the exit. Stop him! Luther commanded, but the agent was fast, inhumanly fast, his magic propelling him toward the door. I didn't think, just acted, reached out with my gift and grabbed his bonds, or where his bonds should have been, found the severed threads, the empty spaces where connections used to live, and I yanked. The agent screamed, collapsing mid-stride. He hit the floor, convulsing, clutching his chest. I'd pulled his severed bonds into conscious awareness, made him feel every connection he'd lost, all at once. It was agony. Guards were on him in seconds, dragging him upright, but he couldn't stand, couldn't fight, could barely breathe through the pain of forced remembering. Luther appeared at my side. What did you do? Made him remember what he lost, I said quietly. Every bond he severed to join the unbound, every connection he cut away. I forced him to feel all of it simultaneously. Gods. Luther stared at the writhing agent. Is it permanent? I don't know. I've never done it before. The agent suddenly laughed, a broken, terrible sound. You think you've won? He gasped. You think stopping one fountain matters? We're everywhere. The poison is already in your homes, your halls, your beds. You can't stop what's coming. Who leads the unbound? Luther demanded, crouching before him. Give me a name. The unbound have no leader. We're a movement, an idea. The agent's smile was bloody. You can't kill an idea, King. You can only watch it spread. Then you're useless. Luther stood, nodding to the guards. Take him to the dungeons, and someone secure that fountain. I want the poison analyzed. As they dragged the agent away, still laughing, I felt the weight of 300 stares. I'd just used magic in front of the entire kingdom's leadership, proven I was something other than a simple Omega. The secret was out. Ladies and gentlemen, Luther said, his voice carrying through the stunned hall, allow me to formally introduce Nina. She is moon-sighted, gifted by the moon goddess with the ability to see and heal mate bonds. She has been helping me investigate the recent deaths among our leadership. He paused. And as you just witnessed, she likely saved dozens of lives tonight. Silence. Then murmuring. Then one of the alphas, Wilson from the Eastern Territories, spoke up. Moon-sighted died out centuries ago. This is... Standing right in front of you, Luther interrupted coldly. I've witnessed her heal a dying bond. I've seen her identify poison no one else could detect. And tonight, she stopped a mass casualty event. His eyes swept the room. Anyone who questions her ability or her value can take it up with me personally. The threat was clear. No one argued, but I could feel their fear, their uncertainty. I wasn't just an Omega anymore. I was something they couldn't categorize or control. I was dangerous. The festival continued, but the mood had shifted. Guards checked every food item, every drink, every serving vessel. Wolves watched each other with new suspicion, and they watched me. Some with hope, wolves whose bonds were struggling, who saw salvation. Others with fear, wolves who'd built their power on the current system and saw threat. Luther stayed close, his presence a shield against the worst of it. "You need to leave," he said quietly during a lull. "This is too exposed, too many potential enemies." "No." I kept my voice low but firm. "Running now makes me look weak, makes us look like we're hiding something. You just revealed yourself as the kingdom's only bond healer. Every wolf with a failing bond will want to use you. Every wolf benefiting from current bond arrangements will want you dead. Then it's good I have the Alpha King's protection." I met his eyes. "We committed to this plan. We see it through." Something flickered in his expression. Pride, maybe, or exasperation. "You're impossible," he muttered. "You're welcome." The night wore on. I monitored bonds, noting which wolves had been affected by the fountain poison. Only 3 had drunk before Luther's warning, and I'd already marked them for healing. I was so focused on bonds that I almost missed the second threat. It was subtle. A shift in the room's energy. Wolves moving with too much purpose toward specific positions. I counted quickly. 8 wolves, all unmated, all carrying the same shimmer of concealment magic I'd seen on the servant. "Luther," I whispered, "we have a problem." His eyes sharpened. "How many?" 8, positioned around the hall. They're surrounding us. The Unbound sent a team. Not just a team, an execution squad. I felt their magic building, synchronizing. They're going to attack. Soon. Luther's hand went to the blade at his hip. "Can you stop them the way you stopped the first one?" "Maybe 1 or 2, not 8 simultaneously." "Then we evacuate." "They'll attack the moment we move. Kill as many as they can in the chaos." I made a decision. "I need to try something." "Nina, trust me." I didn't give him time to argue, just reached out with my gift, not toward the Unbound agents, but toward every healthy bond in the room, and I showed them what I could see. All at once, every mated pair suddenly aware of the golden threads connecting them, visible, tangible, real. The effect was instantaneous. Wolves gasped, reaching for their mates. The bonds flared bright, strengthened by conscious recognition. And in that moment of unified awareness, the Unbound agents' concealment magic shattered. They stood revealed, 8 wolves surrounded by emptiness where bonds should be, severed so completely they looked like holes in reality's fabric. "Enemies in the hall!" Luther's command voice boomed. "Guard formation!" The royal guards moved instantly, weapons drawn. But the Unbound were already attacking. Magic and violence exploded through the festival. I grabbed the nearest table and flipped it for cover as silver weapons flashed. Screams echoed. Someone's shield spell shattered with a sound like breaking glass. An Unbound agent appeared above me, blade raised. Luther's sword took them through the chest. The agent fell. Luther didn't even pause, already moving toward the next threat. I couldn't fight, had no weapons, no combat training, but I had my gift. I reached for the nearest Unbound agent's severed bonds and yanked them into awareness. The agent collapsed, screaming. Did it again to a second agent. Same result. But the remaining 5 had learned. They were shielding against my magic, their own power deflecting my attempts, and they were advancing. "Nina, run!" Luther shouted, locked in combat with 2 agents at once. I couldn't run, couldn't leave him, so I did the only thing I could think of. I reached for the moon goddess's power. If I'm truly moon-sighted, I prayed desperately, then help me now. The moonlight streaming through the hall's windows suddenly intensified, and I felt it. Vast, ancient power flowing through me like water through a channel. I grabbed that power and threw it at the advancing unbound agents, not attacking their bonds, showing them their options, every path they could have taken, every connection they could have formed, every future they'd sacrificed when they severed their bonds and joined the unbound. All of it, all at once, the full weight of roads not traveled. They fell to their knees, sobbing, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they'd lost. The fight ended. Guards moved in, securing the incapacitated agents. Healers rushed to tend the wounded, and I collapsed, the goddess's power draining out of me like water from a broken vessel. Luther was there instantly, catching me before I hit the ground. "I've got you," he said. "You're safe." Did we stop them? All 8 captured. No fatalities on our side. His arms tightened around me. "You stopped them, Nina. Again." I managed a weak smile. "Just doing my job." "Your job is going to kill you if you keep this up." "Probably," I agreed. And then the darkness claimed me, and I knew nothing more. Chapter 7. The Omega Who Rewrote Fate. I woke to voices arguing. Absolutely reckless. She saved hundreds of lives. She exposed herself to every enemy in the kingdom. She did what was necessary. I opened my eyes to find Luther and Teresa in heated debate beside my bed. Again. This was becoming a pattern. "I'm awake," I croaked. They both turned, their argument forgotten. "How do you feel?" Teresa asked, immediately professional. She pressed a hand to my forehead, checking for fever. "Like I channeled the power of a goddess and paid for it." I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. "How long?" "1 day," Luther said, his voice tight with concern. "The festival was evacuated. The unbound agents are in custody, and the entire kingdom is talking about the Omega who can see bonds." Wonderful. I managed to prop myself against the pillows. "I assume the council is thrilled." "The council wants you executed as a heretic," Teresa said bluntly. "Luther is refusing. It's causing quite the political crisis." I looked at the king. His face was drawn, exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept. "You should let them execute me," I said. "It would solve your problems." "Don't." His voice was sharp. "Don't even joke about that." "I'm not joking. I'm being practical. You said it yourself. I'm a political disaster. An Omega with forbidden magic who just revealed that magic to every major pack. Killing me would prove you're still following traditional law." "I'm not killing you." He moved closer, his gray eyes intense. "You saved those wolves, Nina. You stopped the unbound. And more than that..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "You showed mated pairs their bonds, made them visible. Do you know what that means? That I committed mass heresy? That you proved bonds are real." Teresa's voice was quiet. "For centuries, mate bonds have been felt but never seen. Articles of faith. But you made them visible, tangible. You gave wolves proof that the moon goddess's blessings are real." I hadn't thought of it that way. "The conservative wolves are calling you a heretic," Luther continued. "But the younger wolves? They're calling you a prophet, someone who can prove the old ways are true." His expression was complicated. "You've accidentally created a religious movement." "That's not what I intended." "Intentions don't matter, results do." He sat on the edge of the bed. "Nina, 300 wolves saw their bonds last night, felt them glow brighter when you made them conscious. Some of those bonds were struggling, and the couples reported feeling closer afterward, more connected." "Conscious recognition strengthens bonds," Teresa added. "It's basic magical theory, but no one's been able to test it on this scale before because no one could make bonds visible." My head was spinning. "So what happens now?" "Now we deal with the fallout." Luther's voice was grim. The unbound agents are being interrogated. They're not talking, but we recovered items from them. Maps, poison vials, lists of targets. We're learning more about their network. And they're learning about me, I said quietly. The unbound know I can stop them now. They'll be coming for me. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it, which is why you're not leaving the palace. Royal guards, constant protection, no exceptions. I wanted to argue, but he was right. I'd made myself a target. What about the wolves who were poisoned? I asked. The ones who drank from the fountain? In quarantine, waiting for you to heal them when you're strong enough. Teresa's expression was worried. But Nina, you can't keep absorbing poison. Your bond capacity is already damaged. One more absorption might destroy it completely. Then we need another method. I looked at Luther. The interrogations. Have the unbound agents said anything about how the poison is made? If we understand the mechanism, maybe we can create an antidote instead of relying on me to absorb it. They're refusing to talk, but Luther pulled out a folded paper. One of them had this. We're not sure what it means. He handed me the paper. On it was a symbol, a circle with broken threads radiating outward, and beneath it, words in an ancient script I somehow understood. Freedom through severance, choice through emptiness, love without chains. The Unbound's creed, but beneath that, in smaller letters, the last moon rises in the south. She who was first shall be last. She who was bound shall unbind all. My breath caught. This is a prophecy. We thought so too, Teresa said. But prophecies about what? I read it again, the words clicking into place with terrible certainty. It's about me. Or rather, about someone like me, a moon sighted in the south. I looked up at them, someone who was bound, possibly by a bad mate bond, and who will unbind all, end the mate bond system entirely. The Unbound's leader, Luther breathed. They're following a moon sighted who wants to destroy bonds. Not just destroy, transform. I stood, ignoring the way my legs shook. Luther, what if the Unbound aren't just random wolves with grievances? What if they're following someone with the same gift I have? Someone who can see bonds but chose to break them instead of heal them? Another moon sighted? Teresa looked shocked. That's impossible. They only appear once every 1,000 years. I'm here, aren't I? Who's to say I'm the only one? I began pacing, thinking it through. What if there are two of us? Born around the same time, both moon-sighted, but with opposite philosophies. One who heals, one who severs. Twin flames, Teresa whispered. Opposite manifestations of the same gift. It's mentioned in the oldest texts, but I thought it was metaphor. It's not. Luther's voice was cold with understanding. It's a safeguard. The moon goddess creates two moon-sighted, one to preserve, one to transform. They balance each other, and whichever philosophy wins determines the future of wolf bonds for the next 1,000 years. The weight of that crashed down on me. So, this isn't just about stopping murders, I said slowly. This is about competing visions for what wolf society should be, and the goddess is... what? Letting us fight it out to see which vision prevails? That would be consistent with her nature, Teresa said. She doesn't interfere directly. She sets conditions and lets her children choose their path. I looked at Luther. The prophecy says, the last moon rises in the south. Your southern territories. Is there anyone there who fits this description? A female wolf with unusual abilities? Possibly someone who's been bound against her will? His expression shifted. There's a territory I haven't visited yet. The Clearwater Pack. Remote. They rarely attend gatherings. And... He stopped. And what? 5 years ago, their Luna died. Natural causes, supposedly. But the alpha remarried within months. His new mate was young, barely 18, and the pack records show no traditional courtship period. The bond just... appeared. Forced mating, I breathed. That's illegal. It's hard to prove. If a bond forms, most assume it's legitimate. Luther's hands clenched. If someone was forced into a bond and developed moon-sighted abilities as a result, they'd want to destroy the system that allowed it, I finished. They'd see all bonds as chains because theirs was literally a prison. We stared at each other, the pieces falling into horrible place. "We need to go to Clearwater," I said. "Now, before—" The door burst open. A guard, breathing hard, his face pale. "Your Majesty, report from the Southern Territories. The Clearwater Pack—" He swallowed. "It's gone, Your Majesty. Every bond in the pack severed simultaneously. 60 wolves, all of them—" His voice broke. "They're alive, but bond-mad, tearing each other apart. It's a massacre." Luther went white. "When?" "3 hours ago." "And the Alpha, his mate?" "Gone. No bodies found, but witnesses report seeing a female wolf walking south into the wilderness, alone. The last moon. She was making her move. We left within the hour. Luther assembled a team, 20 elite guards, 3 healers including Teresa and me. We rode hard, changing horses twice, stopping only when absolutely necessary. The journey to Clearwater took 2 days that felt like years. As we approached the territory, I felt it, a wrongness in the air, a void where bonds should be. The Clearwater Pack's settlement was chaos. Wolves wandered aimlessly, their eyes vacant. Some sat rocking in corners. Others fought with mindless violence, no longer recognizing packmates. All of them had empty spaces where their bonds should be. Father to child, alpha to pack, mate to mate. Every connection severed. "Gods," Teresa whispered, "this is what complete bond loss looks like." "Can they be healed?" Luther demanded. "I don't know. Bond severance of this magnitude—" She shook her head. "I've never seen anything like it." I dismounted and walked into the settlement. Immediately, several bond-mad wolves turned toward me, sensing the power I carried. "Nina, get back," Luther started. I ignored him, extended my awareness, touching each severed bond in turn. And I felt her. The signature of whoever had done this. It was similar to my own gift, moon-sighted power, goddess-blessed, but twisted. Where my gift healed and connected, hers cut and separated. Where I saw bonds as threads to strengthen, she saw chains to break. "She was here," I said, "recently, maybe hours ago." "Can you track her?" Luther asked, suddenly beside me. "Maybe. Her power leaves traces." I followed the signature south, toward the forest. "She went that way, and—" I stopped, feeling something else. "She wants me to follow." "It's a trap," one of the guards said immediately. "Of course it's a trap." I kept walking toward the forest. "But it's also an opportunity. She'll talk to me. Moon-sighted to moon-sighted. Maybe I can reason with her. Or she'll kill you," Luther said flatly, matching my pace. "That's also possible." I looked at him. "But we need to end this. And the only way to do that is to confront her directly." His jaw tightened. "Then I'm coming with you." "Luther, not negotiable." His voice was absolute. "You're not facing another moon-sighted alone." I wanted to argue, but the truth was, I was terrified, and having him beside me helped. "Fine, but just you. No guards. She won't talk if she feels threatened." Luther nodded. "Teresa, take charge here. Do what you can for the survivors. If we're not back by dawn, I'll send reinforcements." Teresa's expression was grave. "Be careful, both of you." We left the settlement behind and entered the Clearwater forest. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than houses. Moonlight filtered through branches, painting everything silver and shadow. And ahead, I felt her, waiting. We walked in silence for perhaps a mile. Then the forest opened into a clearing, and there she stood. She was younger than I expected, maybe 20, petite, with dark hair and eyes that held ancient pain, pretty in a way that would have been beautiful if not for the emptiness radiating from her, and around her throat, the clear mark of a mating gland. But no bond, just a scar where one had been forcibly severed. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. The goddess said you would. You're the last moon, I said, leader of the unbound. I'm Elisa, and I don't lead the unbound, I freed them. She smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. Just like I'll free everyone else, starting with you. Luther moved in front of me protectively. Elisa's eyes flicked to him. The Alpha King, the one whose mate I freed 3 years ago. She thanked me, you know. At the end, said death was better than living chained to someone who didn't love her. Luther flinched like she'd struck him. You killed her, he said, his voice rough. I freed her. There's a difference. Elisa's gaze returned to me. You understand, don't you, fellow moon-sighted? You've seen the broken bonds, the toxic mates, the wolves trapped in connections that destroy them. You know the mate bond system is flawed. I know some bonds are harmful, I said carefully, but not all. All of them are chains. Her voice hardened. Even the good ones, because they're not chosen, they're assigned. The moon goddess decides who you'll love, who you'll spend your life with, who gets access to your soul. Where's the choice in that? There's choice in how you honor the bond. Rationalizations. Elisa stepped forward. You're making excuses for a system that hurt you too. You're unmated, Nina. Do you think that's coincidence? The goddess made you this way deliberately. She knew if you had a bond of your own, you'd never question the system. You'd be too invested in it. The words hit too close to home. So she made us both empty, Elisa continued. So we could see clearly. So we could change things. And now we're here. The two moon-sighted born to determine the next 1,000 years of wolf society. She extended her hand. Join me. Help me free them all. We can end the suffering together. I stared at her outstretched hand. Part of me understood her, the part that had watched my mother break, that had seen Amanda weeping, that had felt Elsa's relief when her inadequate bond finally died. But no, I said quietly. Elisa's expression shifted. Why not? Because you're not freeing wolves. You're destroying their capacity for connection entirely. I gestured back toward the settlement. Those wolves aren't free. They're broken. They can't feel anything. Not bonds, not pack connection, not even basic family attachment. You didn't liberate them, you lobotomized them. Temporary side effects. They'll adapt. They'll die, I interrupted. Wolves are social creatures. We need connection to survive. Without bonds of any kind, they'll lose their minds within weeks. Better madness than slavery. That's not freedom, my voice rose. Freedom is having options and choosing. What you're doing is removing all options and calling it liberation. It's just a different kind of prison. Elisa's eyes turned cold. Then you're my enemy. I'm your alternative, I corrected. The goddess created us both for a reason. You represent one path, destruction of all bonds. I represent another, transformation of the bond system. We're supposed to give wolves a choice between these visions, not force them into either one. There is no middle ground. Yes, there is. I took a breath, committing fully. I can show wolves their bond options. Let them see all their potential mates, not just the first one fate throws at them. Give them genuine choice within the bond system instead of destroying the system entirely. Elisa stared at me. That's not possible. It is. The moon goddess told me herself. She wants evolution, not revolution. I met her eyes. Elisa, we can work together. You've identified the problem. I have a solution. We can fix this without killing anyone else. For a moment, just a moment, I saw hope flicker in her expression. Then it died, replaced by bitter resignation. The goddess lied to you, Elisa said softly. She told me the same thing once, said I could transform the system from within. But when I tried, when I begged her to show my abusive mate alternative bonds so he'd leave me alone, she refused, said the bond was sacred, unbreakable. Her voice turned hard. So I broke it myself, severed my own mate bond and became truly empty. And you know what I learned? The goddess doesn't want evolution. She wants obedience. And she created you to preserve her system, while she created me to be the villain who makes her system look good by comparison. That's not... Prove me wrong. Elisa's eyes glowed with power. Show me, right now. Use your gift to reveal bond options for the king. Show him all the mates he could have instead of the dead one he's mourning. If you can really do what you claim, do it. I looked at Luther. His face was carefully blank, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. Do it, he said quietly. Show me. My heart hammered. This was the test, the moment that would prove whether I could actually deliver on my promise. I placed my hand on Luther's chest, over his heart, and reached for his bonds. Chapter 8. I showed the king his 3 futures. The moment I touched Luther's chest, his bond structure opened to me like a book. I'd seen the scar tissue before, where Elsa's bond had been severed, but I'd never looked deeper, never searched for what else might be there. Now I did, and I saw them. 3 golden threads, barely visible, dormant but present. Potential bonds waiting to be activated. 3 wolves in the kingdom Luther could mate with if he chose. 1 thread led northeast, toward someone in the capital. The energy felt familiar, powerful, someone I'd probably met. Another led west, distant, barely formed, a weak possibility. The third glowed brighter than the others, stronger, and it led nowhere distant. It led to me. My breath caught. Well? Elisa asked, her voice sharp. Can you do it or not? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus. This wasn't about me. This was about proving the technique worked. I pulled on the goddess's power, carefully this time, not the desperate flood from the festival, but a controlled stream. Luther, I said quietly, I'm going to make your bond options visible. It might feel strange. Do it, he said. I channeled power into the 3 dormant threads, bringing them into conscious awareness. Luther inhaled sharply. I knew the moment he saw them, felt his consciousness brush against the threads, recognizing them for what they were. 3 potential futures, 3 possible mates. Gods, he whispered. I can see them, feel them. 3 options, I confirmed, keeping my voice steady. You're connected to 3 wolves who could be your mate. The bonds aren't active yet, just potential. But if you chose one and pursued it, the bond would form naturally. Elisa had gone very still. You actually did it. 1 leads to someone in the capital, I continued, addressing Luther. I can't tell who without following the thread completely, but the energy feels noble-born, strong wolf, someone you probably already know. I feel that one, he said. It's distant, respectful, like a political alliance. The second is weak, far west, barely a possibility. Yes, that one's so faint I can barely sense it. And the third, I hesitated, is you. His gray eyes opened, locking onto mine. The third bond is you, Nina. Elisa laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Of course it is, the goddess's favorite trick. Make the moon-sighted fall for each other, distract you both from your true purposes with romantic entanglement. Or, Luther said, not looking away from me, she's giving us actual choice. Nina just showed me 3 real options. I can pursue any of them. Or none. That's not manipulation, that's freedom. You're a fool if you believe that. Elisa's power flared around her, dark and cold. The goddess doesn't give choices. She gives the illusion of choice while engineering the outcome she wants. And what she wants is for you, she pointed at me, to bond with him, to be invested in the current system, to stop questioning, to become exactly what she needs, a moon-sighted who will preserve the status quo instead of challenging it. Maybe, I said, pulling my hand back from Luther's chest. The threads remained visible to him. I'd made them permanent. Or maybe she's trusting me to choose wisely, to see the options and pick what's actually right instead of what's convenient. And what is right? Elisa demanded. Bonding with the king? Becoming his Luna? living happily ever after while thousands of wolves suffer in toxic bonds? No. I turned to face her fully. What's right is showing every wolf their options. Not just Luther. Every mated pair, every unmated wolf, everyone. Give them the same choice I just gave him. Let them see their potential bonds and decide for themselves. That would destabilize the entire kingdom. Good. My voice was hard. A system built on ignorance deserves to be destabilized, but I'm not going to replace it with your version, where no one gets bonds at all. I'm going to give wolves real choice. See their options. Choose consciously. And if they pick a bond that turns toxic, they'll know there are alternatives. They can choose differently. Elisa stared at me like I was a creature she'd never seen before. "You're serious," she said slowly. "You actually think you can reshape the entire mate bond system? I think the goddess gave me this power for a reason, and I don't think that reason is to preserve things as they are or destroy them completely. I think it's to evolve them into something better. The wolves won't accept it. The alphas, the conservatives, they'll fight you. Let them." I felt certainty settling into my bones. "Elisa, you've spent 5 years killing to make a point. I'm giving you a better option. Help me. We're both moon-sighted. Together, we could actually transform this system instead of just burning it down." For a long moment, she was silent. I saw the war in her eyes, hope battling cynicism, possibility fighting despair. Then her expression hardened. "You're naive," she said. "You think showing wolves their options will set them free, but all you'll do is create chaos. Wolves abandoning good bonds for shiny new possibilities, packs fracturing, children torn between parents who choose different mates." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "or maybe wolves will see their options and choose to stay with their current mates because they want to, not because they're forced to. Maybe knowing you have alternatives makes you appreciate what you have. Or it makes you constantly wonder if you settled." "That's the risk of freedom," Luther said quietly. "Choice means uncertainty, but the alternative, forcing wolves into bonds they can't escape, that's not protection. It's prison." Elisa's eyes snapped to him. "Easy to say when you're the one with power. When you can choose to pursue Nina or not, walk away from the noble bond, pick freedom. But what about the she-wolf forced into mating with an abuser? What about the male trapped with a mate who despises him? Your choice still leaves them suffering." "Then they choose differently," I said. "See their other bond options. Pursue one of those instead." "You can't just break an active bond and start a new one. The goddess won't allow it." "The goddess told me herself that she wants wolves to have choice." I stepped closer to Elisa. "You said she refused to show your mate alternative bonds, but did you ask her to show you your alternatives? Or did you just sever everything and run?" Elisa flinched like I'd slapped her. She stopped, started again. "I was desperate, in pain. He was hurting me, and the bond made it worse because I could feel his contempt, his disgust." "I'm not judging you," I said gently. "I'm asking, what if there was another option? What if instead of severing your bond completely, you could have seen your other potential mates, chosen one of them? The goddess might have allowed it if you'd asked for choice instead of destruction." "She wouldn't." "How do you know? Did you try?" Silence. "You're guessing," I said quietly. "You're assuming the goddess is cruel based on one moment of desperation. But Elisa, she gave you moonsight. That's not a curse, it's a gift. A tool for change. You've been using it as a weapon. What if you used it as a bridge instead?" Tears were streaming down Elisa's face now. "I can't," she whispered. "I'm too broken, too empty. There's nothing left in me to bridge with." "That's not true." I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, I placed my hand over her heart. "You severed all your bonds, yes, but you didn't destroy your capacity for them. I can feel it, dormant threads just like Luther's, potential connections waiting." "I don't want—" "I know, and that's your choice. But Elisa, you don't have to be alone forever. You don't have to be empty. The goddess didn't make you broken. You broke yourself to escape pain. I understand that. But breaking can be temporary if you let it. She looked up at me, her eyes red and desperate. What are you offering? A partnership. You help me show wolves their bond options, give them real choice. In exchange, I help you heal. Find your potential bonds. Let you decide if any of them are worth pursuing. I squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to choose a mate, but you should at least see your options, practice what we're preaching. And if I refuse? Then we're enemies, Luther said, his hand on his sword. You've killed too many wolves, Elisa, caused too much suffering. If you won't stop peacefully, I'll stop you by force. Elisa's power flared, dark and violent. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd attack. Then it died and she slumped, exhausted. I'm tired, she whispered. So tired of fighting, of being angry, of being empty. Then stop, I said. Join me. Let's build something better together. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. One condition, she said. Name it. You show me my bond options first. Before I help you with anyone else, I need to see... Her voice broke. I need to see if there's anything in me worth saving. There is, I said firmly. And yes, I'll show you. I kept my hand on her heart and reached for her bond structure. What I found made my own heart ache. Elisa had 6 potential bonds, 6 threads that could have connected her to mates who would have cherished her, protected her, loved her properly. But the one she'd been forced into, the one she'd severed, hadn't been among them. Oh, Elisa, I breathed. Your forced bond wasn't even a real option. It was artificial. Someone used magic to create it. Her eyes widened. What? Forced bonds aren't natural. They're made with dark magic, binding 2 souls that were never meant to connect. That's why it felt so wrong, why it hurt so much. It wasn't fate gone bad. It was never fate at all. My alpha, he used magic on me? Or had someone use it for him? Yes. I pulled on the goddess's power and made Elisa's 6 true bond options visible. These are your real choices. 6 wolves who could be your mate naturally. 6 connections that would have formed properly if you hadn't been magically bound to someone else first. Elisa gasped as the threads became visible to her. Golden light, warm and inviting, stretching in 6 different directions. I can feel them, she whispered. They're so different from what I had. Because these are real. Your forced bond was a violation, a crime. I looked at Luther. Forced bonding is punishable by death in your kingdom, isn't it? Yes. His voice was cold with fury. Who did this to you, Elisa? Give me a name. Alpha Nathan, she said, her voice hollow. Of the Clearwater Pack. My father's best friend. When my father died, Nathan claimed me as his mate, said the bond had formed naturally, that fate had blessed him with a young mate to replace his dead Luna. And no one questioned it. Why would they? The bond was there, real enough to feel. No one thought to check if it was natural or forced. Her laugh was bitter. Except me. I felt the wrongness from the beginning, felt the magic hooks digging into my soul. But when I tried to tell people, they said I was just young, inexperienced, that I'd learn to love my mate in time. Where is Nathan now? Luther demanded. Dead. I killed him when I learned to sever bonds. Elisa's voice held no remorse. He was the first. I made sure it hurt. Luther looked like he wanted to argue, to condemn murder, but after a moment he just nodded. Justified, he said quietly. Self-defense against a magical assault. If he'd lived, I'd have executed him anyway. The validation seemed to break something in Elisa. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I knelt beside her, wrapping my arms around her while she wept for the girl she'd been, the bonds she'd lost, the 5 years she'd spent destroying instead of healing. I'm sorry, she choked out, for the wolves I killed, for the bonds I severed. I thought I was freeing them, but I was just spreading my pain. I know, I murmured, but you can stop now. Help me make this right. She clung to me, and I felt something shift in the forest around us. the oppressive wrongness lifting, the void filling with possibility. The moon goddess was watching, approving. When Elisa finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clearer than before. "What do we do first?" she asked. "First?" I helped her stand. "First, we go back to Clearwater and heal the pack you severed. Show them there's hope, that bonds can be repaired or replaced." "I can't repair what I severed." "No, but I can, and you can help. Between both our gifts, we might be able to restore some of what was lost." I looked at Luther. "With your permission, Your Majesty?" He studied Elisa for a long moment, weighing her sincerity. Then he nodded. "Help her fix what she broke. Prove you've changed. Then we'll discuss the Unbound and what happens to them." "Thank you," Elisa whispered. We walked back through the forest together, 3 wolves who should have been enemies, united by a shared vision of what could be. The real work was just beginning. The Clearwater Pack's healing took 3 days. 3 days of Elisa and me working in tandem, her severing the last remnants of damaged bonds, me creating new ones or repairing what could be saved. We couldn't restore everything. Some bonds were too damaged, too far gone. But we gave the survivors options, showed them potential new connections, let them choose whether to pursue new bonds or remain unbonded. By the 3rd day, the settlement was stable. Not whole, it would take months, maybe years for true healing, but alive, functional, hopeful. "I never thought I'd see this place peaceful again," Elisa said, watching children play in the square. "I destroyed it, and you helped me fix it." We helped each other. I sat beside her on the bench. "Elisa, what you did was wrong, but you did it from a place of real pain. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. And now you're making amends. That's what matters." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "One of my bond options is here, in Clearwater. A male, Raphael, one of the survivors. His mate died years ago and he never bonded again. When you showed me my threads, I felt his clearly. He's kind, gentle, nothing like Nathan." "Are you going to pursue it?" "Maybe. Eventually. When I'm less broken." She smiled slightly. "It's strange, having options, having hope. I'd forgotten what that felt like." "Get used to it. We're going to be giving a lot of wolves that feeling." Luther approached, his expression serious. "The Unbound members in custody are requesting to speak with Elisa. They've heard rumors she's working with us now. They want to know if it's true." Elisa tensed. "What should I tell them?" "The truth," I said, "that you found a better way, that they can choose it too." She took a breath, then nodded. "All right, let's talk to them." The Unbound prisoners were held in a secured building under guard. 23 wolves who'd followed Elisa's vision of freedom through destruction. When we entered, they fell silent. "Is it true?" One of them, a female named Carolyn, asked. "Did you betray us?" "I didn't betray you," Elisa said quietly. "I evolved, found a better path than the one I was leading you down." "What path? Serving the Alpha King who enforces the bond system?" "Transforming the bond system," I corrected. "Elisa and I are working together to give wolves real choice. Show them their bond options. Let them decide their own fates." "That's impossible." "It's not. I've already done it, multiple times." I looked at each prisoner in turn. "You joined the Unbound because you were hurt by bonds, trapped in toxic connections, forced into arrangements that destroyed you. I understand. But Elisa's way, severing all bonds completely, that's not freedom. It's just different pain." "So what's your way?" another prisoner asked, a male, Isaac, with burn scars on his arms. "My way is showing you options. If you have a toxic bond, I can reveal your other potential mates, give you the knowledge to choose differently. If you've already severed your bonds and regret it, I can help you find new connections. And if you want to stay unbonded, that's fine too. The point is choice. Real choice." They exchanged glances, uncertain. "What's the catch?" Carolyn asked. "No catch, but there are conditions." Luther stepped forward. You've committed crimes, murder in some cases, conspiracy to destabilize the kingdom. I can't just pardon that. So we die anyway? No. His voice was firm. You serve. Work with Mina and Elisa to help transform the bond system. Use your knowledge of forced bonds and toxic connections to identify wolves who need help. Make amends by healing instead of destroying. And if we refuse? Then you face trial for your crimes. And yes, some of you will likely be executed. He didn't soften it. But if you help us, genuinely help us build something better, I'll advocate for clemency, reduced sentences, a chance at redemption. Silence as they processed this. Then Isaac spoke. I'll do it. I joined the Unbound because my mate beat me for 10 years and everyone said I was weak for not enduring it like a real wolf. If you can show other wolves in my situation that they have options, that they don't have to suffer, I'll help with that. Me too, Carolyn said. My bond was forced, like Elisa's. I want to help identify other forced bonds before they destroy more lives. One by one, the prisoners agreed. By the time we left, we'd recruited 23 reformed Unbound members to our cause. This is insane, Luther said as we rode back toward the capital. You've turned my enemies into allies in less than a week. I've given them what they always wanted, I corrected. Purpose, hope, a way to fight the system that hurt them without destroying everything. You're a revolutionary, Nina. You know that? I smiled. I prefer evolutionary, but yes. Elisa rode beside us, quiet but present, healing slowly. And ahead, the capital waited. 300 wolves who'd seen their bonds at the festival, thousands more who'd heard the rumors. The real work was about to begin. Chapter 9. The Day I Became the Revolution. The capital was in chaos when we returned. Not violent chaos, no riots or battles, but social chaos, the kind that reshapes kingdoms from the inside out. Word had spread about what happened at the festival, about the Omega who could make bonds visible, about wolves seeing their mate options for the first time in history. And wolves wanted more. They lined the streets as we rode through, calling out requests. Show me my bonds. My mate died. Do I have other options? I'm unmated. Please, tell me if there's someone for me. Our bond is struggling. Can you help us? The desperation in their voices made my chest tight. You can't help all of them, Luther said quietly, reading my expression. There are too many. I have to try. You'll burn yourself out. Then I burn out helping people. That's better than staying safe while they suffer. He looked like he wanted to argue but knew it was pointless. We reached the palace to find the council already assembled, waiting. Their expressions ranged from hostile to cautiously hopeful. Your Majesty, Councilman Wilson said stiffly, we need to discuss the Omega situation. Nina, Luther corrected. Her name is Nina. And yes, we'll discuss her work. But first, Elisa, leader of the Unbound, has agreed to help us transform the bond system peacefully. She and 23 former Unbound members will be assisting Nina in identifying and healing toxic bonds. The council erupted. You're pardoning terrorists. She killed dozens. This is madness. Enough! Luther's command voice cut through the noise. Elisa committed crimes under the belief she was freeing wolves from suffering. She was wrong about her methods, but she was right about the problem. And now she's part of the solution. Anyone who disagrees can take it up with me privately. The threat was clear. The council subsided, muttering. Now, Luther continued, Nina has a proposal for how to implement bond choice across the kingdom. I suggest you listen. All eyes turned to me. I stood, my hands shaking slightly. Public speaking had never been my strength, but this was too important to let fear stop me. The current bond system has problems, I began. Forced bonds, toxic connections, wolves trapped with incompatible mates. We all know this. We've all seen it. The difference is, now we can do something about it. By destroying the sacred bond system? Wilson challenged. By evolving it. I met his eyes. I can show wolves their potential bond options, all of them. Let them see who they could mate with. Give them information to make informed choices. That will cause chaos. It will cause change, I corrected. And yes, some of that change will be uncomfortable. Some wolves will realize they're with the wrong mate. Some will want to pursue different options. But that's their right. Wolves deserve to choose their mates consciously, not just accept whoever fate throws at them first. The moon goddess chooses our mates. The moon goddess provides options, Elisa said, speaking for the first time. The council members stiffened at her voice. I've spent 5 years destroying bonds because I thought they were all prisons. I was wrong. But the system that forces wolves into bonds without showing them alternatives? That is a prison. Nina's offering to open the doors. Whether wolves walk through them is up to them. And what of pack stability? Another councilwoman asked, Miranda from the Western Territories. If wolves start abandoning their mates en masse, packs will fracture. Children will be torn between parents. The social order will collapse. Maybe, I acknowledged. Or maybe showing wolves their options will make them appreciate their current mates more. Maybe knowing you chose your bond instead of just accepting it will strengthen connections rather than weaken them. That's a dangerous gamble. So is maintaining a system that causes so much suffering. I pulled out papers I'd prepared. I've compiled data from the Clearwater Pack healing. Of the 60 wolves whose bonds were severed, I showed 43 their alternative bond options. Of those 43, 31 chose to pursue new bonds, but 12 chose to remain unbonded, said having the choice was enough, even if they didn't use it. And, I paused for emphasis, 3 wolves whose bonds I restored said seeing their options made them appreciate their original mates more. They chose to stay even though alternatives existed. The council exchanged glances. You're suggesting a trial program, Miranda said slowly. Yes. Start in the capital. Offer bond site consultations to any wolf who wants one. Show them their options. Track the results over 6 months. I looked at each council member. If it causes catastrophic instability, we stop. But if it helps more than it harms, we expand it kingdom-wide. And who performs these consultations? Wilson asked. You can't possibly serve every wolf yourself. No, but Elisa and I can train others. There are latent bond-sensitive wolves throughout the kingdom, those who have some ability to sense bonds but never developed it. With training, they could help. You're proposing to create an entire order of bond seers. I'm proposing to give wolves the tools to navigate their own relationships. Yes. The council was silent, weighing the proposal. Finally, Luther spoke. I'm authorizing a 6-month trial. Nina and Elisa will establish a bond consultation center in the capital. Any wolf can request an appointment. We'll track outcomes and reassess. His eyes swept the council. Objections? Several council members looked like they wanted to object, but none dared challenge the Alpha King directly. Then it's settled. Luther stood. Nina, you have 6 months to prove this works. Don't waste them. We established the consultation center in a converted temple near the palace, large enough to handle multiple appointments simultaneously, sacred enough to make wolves feel the work was blessed. The first day, we had 50 appointment requests. The second day, 200. By the end of the first week, we had a waiting list of over 1,000 wolves. We need more help, I told Elisa as we collapsed after our 12th consultation of the day. We can't sustain this pace. I've identified 6 wolves with latent bond sensitivity, she said, reviewing her notes. If we can train them quickly, do it. Start tomorrow. The training program began immediately. 6 wolves, 4 females, 2 males, who'd always felt bonds more strongly than others but never understood why. Teaching them was exhausting but rewarding. Watching their gifts awaken, seeing them successfully identify bond threads, hearing their joy when they helped their first client. Within 3 weeks, we had 8 bond seers instead of 2. Within 6 weeks, we'd trained 15, and the results were remarkable. Of the first 500 wolves we consulted, 63 chose to pursue different mate bonds. 41 chose to strengthen their existing bonds after seeing alternatives. and the remaining 396 said simply having the knowledge, knowing they had options, made them feel more in control of their lives. Only 12 bonds dissolved completely, and in each case, both mates agreed the bond had been toxic and ending it was healthier than preserving it. The council couldn't argue with those numbers. But not everyone was happy. The backlash started in the third month. A group calling themselves the traditionalists, conservative wolves who believed the old ways were sacred, began protesting outside the consultation center. "The goddess's design is perfect," they chanted. "Stop corrupting her blessings!" I tried to ignore them, focused on the work. But then the protests turned violent. Someone threw a rock through the center's window during a consultation. The wolf I was helping, a young male named Donnie, who'd been forced into a bond at 16, flinched so hard he nearly fell off his chair. "It's all right," I said, though my heart was racing. "Just some broken glass." "They hate you," Donnie said quietly. "The traditionalists. They think you're destroying wolf society." "I'm changing it. That's not the same thing." "To them it is." He was right, of course. The next week, one of our trainee bond seers was attacked on her way home. She survived, but the message was clear. The traditionalists wanted us to stop. Luther increased security, assigned guards to every bond seer, made public statements condemning the violence, but the traditionalists only grew bolder. "They're afraid," Elisa said one night as we reviewed security protocols. "Afraid of losing power. The old system benefited strong alphas who could claim any mate they wanted and call it fate. Bond choice threatens that." "So what do we do?" "We prove them wrong. Show that bond choice makes society stronger, not weaker." She looked at me. "Nina, you've been avoiding something important." I knew what she meant. "Luther's bond," I said quietly. "You showed him his options 3 months ago. He hasn't pursued any of them. He's waiting for you to make a choice." "I know." "So what are you waiting for?" I didn't have a good answer. The truth was, I was terrified. Luther had 3 bond options, and one of them was me. But pursuing that bond meant becoming Luna Queen, becoming the face of this revolution, making myself an even bigger target. And more than that, it meant trusting that our bond would work, that I wouldn't become another toxic connection, another wolf trapped in an arrangement that hurt more than it healed. "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if we're wrong for each other? What if the bond forms and it's awful and we're stuck?" "You won't be stuck," Elisa said gently. "That's the whole point of what we're doing. If the bond doesn't work, you'd have other options. You could choose differently." "But that would mean publicly failing at the very thing I'm telling other wolves to trust. Or it would mean publicly demonstrating that bond choice works even when things don't go as planned." Elisa squeezed my hand. "Nina, you can't ask wolves to be brave if you're not willing to be brave yourself." She was right. I hated that she was right. I found Luther in his study, working through the endless paperwork that came with ruling a kingdom. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up, his gray eyes unreadable. "About?" "Your bond. With me. The one I showed you 3 months ago." He set down his pen carefully. "All right?" I sat across from him, trying to organize my thoughts. "I've been avoiding this conversation because I'm afraid," I said. "Afraid of failing, afraid of proving the traditionalists right, afraid of becoming Luna Queen and making everything worse." "And now?" "Now I realize I can't ask other wolves to trust bond choice if I'm not willing to trust it myself." I met his eyes. "Luther, I need to know, do you want to pursue our bond? Not because it's politically convenient or because fate says we should, because you actually want to." He was quiet for a long moment, then he stood, moved around the desk, and knelt in front of my chair so we were at eye level. "Nina, I've been waiting 3 months for you to be ready. Not rushing you, not pressuring you, because I wanted you to choose me freely, not because you felt obligated." His hand came up to cup my face. "Yes, I want to pursue our bond. I want to see if what we could have is as powerful as what I feel when you're near, but only if you want it too." "I do," I whispered. "I'm terrified, but I do." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile I'd learned to treasure. "Then let's be terrified together." He kissed me, soft and careful, and I felt it, the bond thread between us flaring to life. Not forcing, not demanding, just opening, creating a pathway that we could walk down if we chose. And God's help me, I chose. I deepened the kiss, letting the bond form properly. Felt Luther's emotions flood into my awareness, his hope, his fear, his fierce protectiveness, his surprising tenderness. And beneath it all, love. Real, chosen, conscious love. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the bond glowed between us. Golden and strong and beautiful. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Complete," I said, and meant it. We announced our mating bond the next day. The reaction was immediate and divided. Supporters celebrated, the Alpha King and the moon-sighted Omega united by choice, a perfect symbol of the new system. Traditionalists raged. A wolfless Omega as Luna Queen? Abomination. Heresy. I ignored them all and focused on the work. With Luther's bond as proof that bond choice could lead to genuine love, more wolves requested consultations. The waiting list grew to 3,000. We trained more bond seers, expanded the center, opened satellite locations in other cities, and slowly, carefully, the kingdom began to change. Wolves in toxic bonds found the courage to pursue alternatives. Forced bonds were identified and dissolved. Unmated wolves saw their options and chose consciously instead of just waiting for fate. It wasn't perfect. There were failures. Bonds that dissolved when they shouldn't have. Wolves who chose unwisely and regretted it. But overall, the data was clear. Bond choice was making wolves happier, more fulfilled, more in control of their own lives. The council had no choice but to approve expanding the program kingdom-wide. 6 months after we started, Luther stood before the assembled pack leaders and made it official. Effective immediately, all wolves in the kingdom have the right to bond consultation, to see their mate options, to choose consciously. The old system of blind fate is over. We're entering an age of informed choice. The proclamation sent shockwaves through wolf society, but it also sent a message. Change was here. Change was permanent. And I had helped make it happen. That night, lying in bed beside Luther, our bond humming contentedly between us, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. The traditionalists still protested, some bonds still failed, the work was endless. But I'd found my purpose, my place, my pack, and I'd done it by being exactly who I was, a wolfless Omega with a gift for seeing what others couldn't. "What are you thinking?" Luther murmured, his arm around my waist. "That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He kissed my shoulder. "Good, because I'm not letting you go." I smiled into the darkness. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to be let go. I wanted to stay. And that made all the difference. Chapter 10. The Omega Who Broke the Moon. And Fixed It. 1 year after we started the bond consultation program, the moon goddess spoke to me again. I was alone in the temple, now the central hub for bond seers across the kingdom, when moonlight suddenly intensified, pouring through the windows like liquid silver. The familiar vast presence filled the space. "You've done well, child." I wasn't afraid this time, just tired. We'd consulted over 10,000 wolves in the past year, trained 83 bond seers, dissolved 247 toxic bonds, and formed 318 new ones. The kingdom was transforming, but the cost had been high. "Have I?" I asked aloud. "The traditionalists tried to assassinate me twice last month. 3 of my bond seers were injured in attacks, and there's a pack in the far north that's threatening to secede rather than accept bond choice. Change always faces resistance. That doesn't make it wrong. Tell that to the wolves who are suffering because of my choices. Tell it to the thousands who are thriving because of them." The goddess's voice held gentle reproach. "Nina, you've given my children something I couldn't. the ability to see their choices clearly, to navigate bonds with knowledge instead of blind faith. That's a gift beyond measure. Then why do I feel like I'm failing? Because you care. Because you see every individual tragedy and take it personally. A pause. That's what makes you a good moon-sighted. Your predecessor, Elisa, only saw the system. You see the souls within it. I leaned against the altar, exhausted. Is it enough, what we're doing? Look at what you've built. The moonlight shifted, showing me visions. A young she-wolf in the Eastern Territories, seeing her 3 bond options and choosing the mate who treated her with respect instead of the powerful alpha who wanted to claim her. An older male whose mate had died, discovering he had 2 potential new bonds and choosing to pursue one. Finding love again after years of loneliness. A pair of wolves in a struggling bond, seeing their alternatives but choosing each other anyway. Their bond strengthening from conscious choice rather than obligation. Elisa, slowly healing, carefully pursuing her bond with Raphael, taking it slow, learning to trust again. Luther and me, our bond glowing golden and strong, built on choice and mutual respect. You've shown wolves that bonds can be beautiful when chosen freely, the goddess said, that fate provides options, not mandates, that love is stronger when it's willed rather than assigned. But it's not perfect. Nothing is. Perfection isn't the goal. Evolution is. The presence grew warmer. Nina, I created the bond system millennia ago to stop wolves from destroying each other. It worked, but it also became rigid, oppressive. And when I created the moon-sighted to recalibrate it, I knew there would be pain. Growth is always painful. You created Elisa and me knowing we'd clash. I created you as opposing forces, yes. Destruction and healing, revolution and evolution. I gave you both gifts and let you choose how to use them. A note of pride. You chose wisely, both of you. The moonlight began to fade. Wait, I called out. What happens now? Is the system fixed? Are we done? Systems are never fixed. They're maintained, adjusted, improved. The voice grew distant. Your work is just beginning, Nina, but you're not alone in it anymore. You've built something that will outlast you. An order of bond seers, a culture of choice. That's more than most moon-sighted achieve in a lifetime. Will there be another moon-sighted in another 1,000 years? Perhaps, or perhaps the system you've built will evolve enough that the next one won't be needed. A final whisper. Live well, little Omega. You've earned your peace. The presence vanished, leaving only normal moonlight and the scent of night-blooming flowers. I stood alone in the temple, feeling the weight of the goddess's words. We weren't finished, but we'd started something that would continue. That was enough. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Your Majesty, Luna Queen, the guard announced, Councilman Wilson requests an audience. Luther and I exchanged glances. Wilson had been one of our harshest critics. Send him in, Luther said. Wilson entered looking uncomfortable. For a proud alpha, that was unusual. Your Majesties, he said, bowing stiffly, I come to apologize. I nearly fell off my chair. Apologize? Luther's tone was carefully neutral. Yes. Wilson's jaw worked like the words physically hurt. I was wrong. About bond choice. About Nina. About all of it. What changed your mind? I asked. My daughter. His voice softened. She's 18. Came of age last month. Under the old system, she would have waited for fate to assign her a mate. But with bond choice available, she requested a consultation. He pulled out a paper. A bond site report. Your bond seer showed her 3 potential mates. One was the son of my political ally, a match I'd hoped for. Powerful, prestigious, perfect on paper. Wilson's expression twisted. The second was a scholar, gentle, kind, not politically useful. And the third? Luther prompted. A rogue, an outsider with no pack, no status, no prospects. Wilson looked at me. She chose him. "Oh," I said softly. I was furious, demanded she reconsider, told her she was throwing away her future. He swallowed hard. But she said something that stopped me. She said, "Father, you married Mother because fate chose her for you, and you've been miserable together for 20 years. I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing happiness." Silence. "She was right," Wilson continued. "My bond with my mate is functional, political. We do our duty, but there's no joy in it, no real connection." And I realized I was about to force my daughter into the same loveless existence because it was proper. "So you let her choose the rogue," I said. "I let her choose happiness, and you know what? She's radiant. Her bond with him is so strong I can see it without being moon-sighted." Wilson's voice broke slightly. "That's what you've given wolves, Nina. Not chaos, not destruction. The chance to choose joy instead of obligation." "Thank you," I managed. "That means more than you know." "I've convinced 6 other council members to support bond choice publicly," Wilson continued. "We'll be making a statement this afternoon. The traditionalists won't be able to claim the entire council opposes you anymore." Luther stood and extended his hand. "Your support is appreciated, Councilman." Wilson shook it firmly. Then, to my shock, he bowed to me. "Luna Queen, I was wrong about you. You're exactly the leader this kingdom needs." After he left, I turned to Luther with wide eyes. "Did that just happen?" "I believe the traditionalists' opposition just collapsed." Luther was grinning. "Nina, if Wilson's on our side, the other conservatives will follow. You've won." "We've won," I corrected. "All of us. The bond seers, Elisa, you, everyone who believed in choice." He pulled me into his arms. "We make a good team." "The best," I agreed. The formal announcement came that afternoon. 7 council members, including Wilson, stood before the kingdom and declared their support for bond choice, called it a blessing, not a curse, urged other wolves to embrace the new system. The traditionalist movement fractured overnight. Without council support, without the legitimacy of conservative approval, their protests fizzled. Some diehards remained, but most quietly accepted that change was permanent. The northern pack that had threatened to secede, they requested a bond seer consultation center instead. Within 3 months, bond choice was simply normal, the way things were done. Young wolves came of age expecting to see their options. Struggling couples sought consultation before considering separation. Forced bonds were actively hunted and dissolved. The culture had shifted, and I found myself with less crisis management and more time for the parts of the work I actually enjoyed: training new bond seers, researching bond magic, writing guides for wolves navigating complex relationship situations. Elisa became my co-director, bringing her knowledge of bond severance to help identify the worst cases. She and Raphael had officially mated, a careful, conscious choice that both of them worked on daily. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that made it beautiful. The reformed Unbound members became some of our best counselors. Their experiences with toxic bonds made them uniquely qualified to help others in similar situations. Luther governed with wisdom, balancing tradition and progress, keeping the kingdom stable through massive social change. And me? I became Luna Queen in more than name, learned to navigate court politics, made alliances, built coalitions, used my position to push for other reforms, better protections for omegas, stricter punishments for forced bonding, education about healthy relationships. It was exhausting work, but it was mine, and I was good at it. 2 years after we started the bond consultation program, I discovered I was pregnant. The healers said it was impossible. My womb had been declared barren years ago, but apparently the bond magic I'd been channeling had healed old damage, repaired what had been broken. I was going to be a mother. Luther was terrified and elated in equal measure. Started reading every book about child rearing he could find, drove the palace staff crazy with preparations. Elisa cried when I told her. Happy tears for once. "You deserve this," she said, hugging me tight. After everything you've sacrificed, you deserve joy." The pregnancy was difficult. My body still wasn't fully equipped for it, but Teresa and the healers monitored me closely, and 8 months later, I delivered a healthy daughter. We named her Vera. It meant truth. The kingdom celebrated, not just because their Alpha King had an heir, but because the wolfless Omega had proven that broken things could heal, that impossible things could become real, that hope was worth holding on to. Vera was 3 months old when the moon goddess appeared one final time. I was in the nursery, rocking my daughter to sleep, when moonlight filled the room. "She's beautiful," the goddess said softly. "She is." I looked down at Vera's tiny face. "Will she be moon-sighted?" "No. That gift appears once every 1,000 years. She'll be something different. Something new." Warmth in the voice. "The children born into the system you've created will be the first generation to truly understand bond choice. They'll build on what you started, take it further than you can imagine." "That's terrifying and wonderful." "That's parenthood." A pause. "Nina, I'm proud of you, of what you've built, of who you've become." "I couldn't have done it without help." "The best leaders never can. That's what makes them great, knowing when to accept help." Vera stirred in my arms, making a small sound. "Love her well," the goddess said. "Teach her to see souls, not just bonds, to choose with her heart and mind together, to build instead of destroy." "I will." "I know." The presence faded, leaving just moonlight and my daughter's soft breathing. I sat there for a long time, rocking Vera, thinking about everything that had changed. A year ago, I'd been a rejected Omega, wolfless, barren, worthless in the eyes of my pack. Now I was Luna Queen, mother, architect of a social revolution. But more than that, I was exactly who I'd always been. An Omega who felt too much, who saw what others couldn't, who refused to accept that broken meant worthless. I just finally found a world that valued those traits instead of punishing them. "You're going to grow up in a better world," I whispered to Vera. "One where you get to choose your path, your mate, your future. And if anyone tries to tell you you're less because of what you are, you tell them your mother remade society rather than accept their limitations." She yawned, utterly unimpressed with my grand statements. I laughed softly. Yes, this was exactly where I was supposed to be. Epilogue. 5 years later. The kingdom had stabilized into its new normal. Bond consultation was as routine as any other coming-of-age ritual. Young wolves expected to see their options. Older wolves knew they could seek help if their bonds struggled. The traditionalists were a historical footnote. Most had quietly adapted to the new system. A few still grumbled, but without real power behind their complaints. The Bond Seer Order had grown to over 200 trained practitioners. They'd become a respected profession, well-paid and highly sought after. Elisa ran the training program with fierce dedication. She and Raphael had 2 children now, living proof that severed bonds could heal if given time and care. Luther governed with the confidence of a king whose reforms had worked. The kingdom was prosperous, stable, and genuinely happier than it had been in generations. And me? I stood in the temple, the place where it all began, watching a new group of Bond Seer trainees practice reading threads. Vera sat beside me, nearly 6 years old now, asking endless questions about how magic worked and why people made the choices they did. She didn't have moon sight, but she had something equally valuable, the ability to see people, really see them, and meet them where they were. "Mama," she asked, tugging my sleeve, "why do some bonds glow brighter than others?" "Because some people work harder at their connections," I said. "Bonds aren't just magical, they're also choice. Every day you choose to strengthen them or let them fade." "Like you and Papa?" "Exactly like me and Papa." She considered this seriously. "When I grow up, I'm going to choose someone who makes me laugh, like Papa makes you laugh." My heart swelled. That's a very good criterion. Luther appeared in the doorway, Vera's younger brother, Sammy, 2 years old, perched on his shoulders. "There are my favorite girls," he said, grinning. Vera ran to him and he scooped her up with his free arm, sometimes managing to hold both children without dropping either. I walked over, and he leaned down to kiss me, careful not to bonk me with a child in the process. Our bond hummed contentedly, 5 years strong and still growing. "The Southern Territories sent their approval," he said, "the last holdout. Bond choice is now officially accepted in every pack in the kingdom." "We did it," I breathed. "We actually did it." "You did it," he corrected. "I just provided the political backing." "We did it together," I insisted. "Me, you, Elisa, the bond seers, the wolves who trusted us, all of us." He smiled. "Together. I like that." Vera tugged his hair. "Papa, can we see the bonds? Mama was teaching me." "Of course." Luther looked at me. "Show her?" I reached for my gift, still strong after all these years, and made our family bonds visible. Golden threads connected me to Luther, him to me, both of us to our children, the children to each other. A network of love and choice and conscious commitment. Vera gasped. "It's so pretty." "It is," I agreed, "and it's yours. Your pack, your family, your choice to strengthen every day." She reached out like she could touch the threads, her small hand passing through light. "I choose you," she declared solemnly. "All of you." "We choose you too," Luther and I said together. And standing there in the temple, surrounded by my family and the bond seers I'd trained, I felt the goddess's final words echo. "Live well, little Omega. You've earned your peace." I had. We all had. The Omega who couldn't shift had remade Wolf Society. The broken girl had healed a kingdom. And the rejected one had become exactly who she was always meant to be. Not despite her differences, because of them.